בחרמון נמס השלג בחצי הלילה, בחרמון זורם לו פלג בחצי הליל, אבא שם על הר השלג בחצי הלילה, שר שירים על נס בפלא עם כל ישראל. האביב שוב צוהל ואיתי משתולל, איזה לילה, איזה לילה, איזה לילה, איזה ליל. האביב שוב צוהל ואיתי משתולל, איזה לילה, איזה לילה, איזה לילה, איזה ליל. בבקעת תמר פורח בחצי הלילה, הירח שם זורח בחצי הליל, שם אחי ודאי שומע בחצי הלילה את שירנו השמח כאן בישראל. האביב שוב צוהל ואיתי משתולל, איזה לילה, איזה לילה, איזה לילה, איזה ליל. האביב שוב צוהל ואיתי משתולל, איזה לילה, איזה לילה, איזה לילה, איזה ליל. במדבר הולך החושך בחצי הלילה, שקט הס בארץ גושן בחצי הליל, לדודי עיני נחושת בחצי הלילה, וגם הוא חוגג כמו שכל בית ישראל. האביב שוב צוהל ואיתי משתולל, איזה לילה, איזה לילה, איזה לילה, איזה ליל. האביב שוב צוהל ואיתי משתולל, איזה לילה, איזה לילה, איזה לילה, איזה ליל. ואני יושב בבית בחצי הלילה, עם נרות וגביע יין בחצי הליל, וכוכב מאיר עיניים בחצי הלילה, לי מוסר ברכת שמיים ולכל ישראל. האביב שוב צוהל ואיתי משתולל, איזה לילה, איזה לילה, איזה לילה, איזה ליל. האביב שוב צוהל ואיתי משתולל, איזה לילה, איזה לילה, איזה לילה, איזה ליל. שוב צוהל.
Прийшли окупанти до нас в Україну, форма новенька, воєнні машини, та трохи поплавився їх інвентар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російські танкісти сховались з кущі, щоб лаптем посьорбати довбані щі, та трохи у чах перегрівся навар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Приперли зі сходу до нас барани для восстановлення
великої страни.
Найкращий пастух баранячих отар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Їх доводи всяке озброєння різне, потужні ракети, машини залізні, у нас на всі доводи є коментар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Вони захопити хотіли нас зразу, а ми зачаїли на орків образу з російських бандитів, робить примар. Байрактар, Байрактар.
Sometimes
Yes.
The Leaf Street Army sends its regards.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 980 of the news. And it's good to see you all once again. And today we learned that Kim Jong-un scrapped together some spare cash to launch another ICBM, and this time at a record height. And also, we're hearing of a major Iranian attack imminent on Israel before Election Day. We have big news to cover today, and it's good to see you all once again.
And of course, we're going to be covering the past 24 hours of news from around the world, as we've been getting incredibly escalatory and very concerning news out of the East Asian area today, along with some heavy action coming out of the area of the Middle East, along with a clear statement from the Israeli, American intelligence, and the Iranians that the Iranians do plan on conducting a counterattack against the last Israeli attack before the American election is to commence here in the early part of November. At the exact same time, we've also been able to hear some very heavy news out of Ukraine, but to give you all a little bit of a better overview, we were able to hear that the North Koreans fired one of their Hwasong intercontinental ballistic missiles today in a test. This missile landed incredibly close to the maritime borders of the state of Japan, in the area of the Sea of Japan, or as it's sometimes called, the East Sea, as Google likes to say, just in case some of y'all do call it the East Sea for some reason. It is the Sea of Japan. But nevertheless, the threat is incredibly clear, and it does seem as though the North Koreans are once again wanting to wave around the nuclear saber of a sort to try and see if they can bring South Korea, Japan, the United States, and the East Asian alliance as a whole to heel. We most likely believe that that will not be happening, as the Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin came out today and said that any North Koreans that are currently entering Russia and fighting on the side against Ukraine at the moment will be returning home in body bags, making it seem as though the United States government is starting to take a little bit more of a serious approach against the axis of evil elsewhere in the world. Meanwhile, outside of East Asia, we have been able to hear of some pretty heavy ground action in the area of southern Lebanon, as we have been able to see that Israeli armed forces have continued their operations against Hezbollah and other proxy forces that are currently operating in the area, including the the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, and we've also been able to see heavy Air Force actions by the Israeli Air Force in the area of Baalbek, striking and destroying some of the major Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps strongholds that are used to supply the Hezbollah forces south of Beirut. We also understand that the town of Zahle will most likely come under airstrike here very soon. The Israeli Air Force, of course, denoting from Israeli intelligence that Zahle and Baalbek are both used as major ammunition storage depots and also transfer facilities to move the munitions and equipment further south towards the point of contact. At the exact same time, we are getting information from the Israelis and American intelligence that the Islamic Republic of Iran is planning and is dedicated at this point to conducting an attack against Israel once more sometime before the United States election that is supposed to be occurring here within just the next few days shy of the very beginning of the month of November. We will be waiting to see when that attack occurs. Enforcer HQ is of course going to be on high alert during that time, waiting for any news to surface or begin to emerge of the Iranian attack, the size of the attack, and also the possible damage that may be caused to the state of Israel, as well as coalition actions that would be involved in the defense of the state of Israel, as well as other countries that may also inadvertently be or directly attacked by the Islamic Republic of Iran. Meanwhile, outside the Middle East and in Ukraine, heavy action has occurred today, and the first announcement by the Ukrainians has been made that 8 North Koreans are apparently no longer starving, as they have now been made one with the ground below, and apparently another North Korean has also been captured as well within the area of Kursk. We do not have video or picture evidence to corroborate that claim. We only have the Ukrainian governmental statement, which is leading us to believe at the moment that while the story is being reported, and we will be reporting it as well, that we do not have any verifiable evidence yet of the existence of a North Korean prisoner or the deaths of North Korean soldiers on this front at all, at least in terms of tangible video and picture evidence, which is a massive corroborator of validity here on this channel for news sources. Nevertheless, we did get to see that this did coincide with another major ground operation by the Russian Federation in this area today, with armored forces once again pushing another attempt towards the axes of Lyubomovka as well as Bolshoi Soldatskoy by the Russian 810th Naval Infantry Brigade. From what we can tell, most of those forces did end up taking very high losses, and it appears that the attacking force lost most of its cohesion before it was actually able to hit the main Ukrainian defensive line within Kursk at the moment, largely meaning that this offensive was a failure again today, resulting in high vehicular losses and manpower losses for the Russian Federation as a whole. The exact whereabouts or damage caused to North Korean forces that may be in the area is of course already prior stated, but we're not entirely sure as we do not have video footage to corroborate that claim. Nevertheless, we were able to see that heavy Ukrainian defensive actions and offensive actions were occurring in different fronts, with the Ukrainian Russian Volunteer Corps conducting offensive efforts in the area of Vovchansk today, attempting to push the Russians further back, along with the Ukrainian forces conducting defensive efforts around the area of Seversk, Liman, the area of Pokrovsk, as well as Chasiv Yar and Volodar as well today, where many Ukrainian forces were engaged in the struggle to continue to stop the Russian wave from surging forward and capturing more ground inside of Ukraine. At the exact same time, we have also heard that the Republic of Poland has requested permission from the United States of America to be able to assist the state of Ukraine in shooting down Russian drones over Ukrainian airspace. Once again, this attempt has been made multiple times, and every single time in the past, it has been shot down by the United States government. But nevertheless, we have loads of...
I just want to double check something real quick. You're saying that the U.S. Defense Secretary is the one who said that the North Koreans will come back in body bags if they show up in Ukraine. Did I hear you right on that?
That is correct.
That is crazy. Like, honestly, when you said that, that was like a little shock there for a minute. I was like, wait a minute, the U.S. Defense Secretary said that? That's like a 180 from like the rhetoric we've been hearing out of the Defense Department right now. So, bravo to him for that, because that's the type of talk we should be doing.
It is the kind of talk that we should be doing, and while I do not have that on the map at the moment, I will be reading that off to y'all while we talk about the North Koreans that were killed and supposedly captured today within the Kursk Oblast. But nevertheless, we have an insanely high amount of news to cover today, and once again, a lot of this is starting to end up being far more escalatory and far more of a dangerous or perilous sort of an environment than many would have imagined just several months ago at the beginning of this year. But nevertheless, moving on into the Korean Peninsula, we have been able to see that North Korea has conducted one of the most escalatory actions at this point against South Korea and the United States at large. From what we were able to hear today, the North Koreans did launch a missile. We were able to get corroboration later that it wasn't just any long-range missile. It was actually a Hwasong intercontinental ballistic missile that was launched by the North Koreans and landed somewhere within the Sea of Japan. I want to make sure that we can get y'all this information as best as we can, so I'm going to be reading directly from OSINT Defender's statement that was made today, just to make sure that we don't get anything confused at all with the news that came out. North Korea tonight appears to have conducted its first launch this year of an intercontinental ballistic missile, with the missile being launched at a high vertical angle and then splashing down in the Sea of Japan. This is the first ICBM test by North Korea since the 18th of December of 2023, when North Korea carried out a successful test of the solid-fuel Hwasong 18 intercontinental ballistic missile. This test also only comes a day after the South Korean Ministry of Defense had reported that North Korea was preparing to deploy a road-mobile intercontinental ballistic missile using a new 12-axle transporter erector launcher, also called the TEL. The TELs are a thing that many people will know at this point, specifically from our coverage of the Ukraine war and what's been going on with the Russian Federation. The Russian Federation has a lot of these transporters, or TELs as they're called. Theirs are specifically called the T'Pol-M. The North Koreans do have a very similar version of this. We're actually seeing a picture of one right here. It is almost a carbon copy in many ways of the T'Pol-M launcher, or TEL, that we have seen inside of the Russian Federation before, but nevertheless, the North Koreans appear to be using this as their primary intercontinental ballistic missile arsenal, and not only that, this is where we believe the test was conducted today, was from one of the silos of one of these TELs. The missile was launched at an incredibly high trajectory. It was actually the highest trajectory that we have ever seen one of these ICBM tests launched at so far. The missile immediately returned back out of a pretty much past the Kármán line, and then splashed down very close to Japan on the easternmost side of the Sea of Japan, from what we're able to understand. Just outside the maritime borders, but still incredibly close. From what we understand, the North Koreans are once again issuing an incredibly concerning threat. Through this nuclear test launch today, of course, I do have to make sure to let everyone know, while it is an intercontinental ballistic missile, it did not have an armed nuclear warhead on it, and there was no nuclear detonation when it impacted the Sea of Japan. Nevertheless, it is still a very concerning thing that such an action was made by North Korea today, considering the diplomatic situation on the Korean Peninsula as tense as it has been for largely the past 30 to 40 years at this point. We are understanding that.
Also, Enforcer, I wonder how they got this thing to actually go as high as they did, because this was a record flight altitude for this ICBM launch. And also, it looks like the flight time was 1 hour and 26 minutes. So that was the longest to date as well. So I wonder if they're simply making a natural progression of technology with their ICBM missiles, or are they receiving new technology from Russia in the last couple of weeks? I wonder which one it is.
It may be that they may have been able to get access to Russian rocket scientists who may be working with Roscosmos that are able to refine North Korean rocketry technology a great deal. It doesn't really require the existence of a nuclear scientist to be present for the usage and operation of an ICBM or further refinement and development. Interestingly enough, during the time that the Soviet Union was developing a lot of their tried and true intercontinental ballistic missile platforms that the Russians still use to this day, that was largely tied in directly to the rest of the Soviet space program, including the peaceful exploration of space that was done on the Soyuz capsules that were launched from Soyuz rockets. Nevertheless, we do believe that probably, considering that Roscosmos is currently drying up on business a little bit, considering that no one really wants to use a crappy Soyuz capsule anymore, and for that matter, use it from such a crappy and corrupted country, it seems as though a lot of those Roscosmos scientists may have been put on tour and sent to visit North Korea and maybe help them out with minimal refinements or fine tunings that needed to be done to make this intercontinental ballistic missile, the Hwasong 18, as successful as it possibly can be. This may also be a Hwasong 19 as well. Those are some of the longest range versions of North Korean rockets that we've seen so far, and so for this reason, it could be either one. But nevertheless,
It certainly seems like it could be, because this is a sudden and advanced change that the North Koreans have suddenly had in their technology. And considering the fact that North Korea just sent their troops over to Ukraine, obviously they were expecting something in return for doing that. So we had been hearing the talk about nuclear weapons technology being exchanged, and maybe this is the actual manifestation of that, is this new technology resulting in a longer flight time and also an altitude as well. That could be it.
It could be. It may possibly be. And it may be adding to the fact that while the North Koreans are largely, from what we understand, based off of the shipping reports and intelligence that we're getting, they're sending the North Korean soldiers specifically for food imports, there may also be an additional amount. It may actually be both of these things at the same time. While they're getting additional food imports to help their country stabilize a little bit, they're also making sure to get nuclear scientists, well, not really nuclear scientists, but rocket scientists from the Russian Federation, since Roscosmos isn't really doing much at the moment, to come into North Korea and help them to further refine their intercontinental ballistic missiles to where they have an incredibly high success rate, and not only that, are able to actually achieve what they are technically supposed to according to their design specifications. It is something to say that the North Koreans are getting incredibly dangerous at this point with the kind of rhetoric and endless escalations that they're conducting against the Western world as well as the United States of America. We do have to keep in mind that North Korea easily has the ability to be able to strike South Korea with nuclear weapons pretty much within the next hour or the next 2 hours, as it doesn't take a lot or really much at all to be able to fire off a missile armed with a nuclear warhead into South Korea, considering that the size of South Korea is fairly small. And not only that, the kind of weaponry that would be needed to achieve those ranges would not be that advanced. The firing and testing of a Hwasong-18 or a Hwasong-19 intercontinental ballistic missile is specifically targeted at the United States of America. That has, according to the North Koreans, been the entire reason that they have produced an intercontinental ballistic missile, was to directly threaten the United States of America and to be able to try and greatly limit the actions that they can take in support of Japan or South Korea in pertainment to situations that deal with North Korea. This means that this nuclear test today isn't one that many Americans could say isn't directed at me. It's actually directed to the Japanese or the South Koreans. It is directed entirely at the United States of America, as these intercontinental ballistic missiles only have one purpose, which is to strike the continental United States or any of our overseas territories within the Pacific or anywhere else in the world for that matter. One has to keep that in mind. I cannot stress that enough, that the North Koreans, in conducting this test today, is directly threatening the United States of America with some sort of a nuclear exchange or some sort of a nuclear attack in a preemptive form for the actions that we have been taking in support of South Korea recently, or actions that North Korea isn't really happy with, like us not giving them food. It's one of those two things, and I have to say that it is very interesting to see that the North Koreans decided to really ramp up the pressure against the United States diplomatically today, because of course on the Korean Peninsula things have been about as tense as it can get at the moment. But still, nevertheless, it seems as though the United States Department of Defense at least has not taken too kindly to the actions that the North Koreans made today on the Korean Peninsula, and it seems as though it is highly likely that they may have, in better terms, pissed the Department of Defense off, as we were able to hear that as North Korean soldiers started finally arriving in Kursk today, at least from what we heard, the first numbers of them have been killed according to the Ukrainians, we were able to hear a very interesting statement from Secretary Lloyd Austin, or the U.S. envoy to the United Nations. They stated that North Korean troops who enter Ukraine will return in body bags. A very, very clear message. Like an insane.
That is crazy, man. Like that is a very clear message. And like I said earlier, that is not what we usually hear out of the Department of Defense in the United States. Typically, it's, oh, let's de-escalate, let's calm the tensions, people, let's don't get too crazy. But at this point, it's like we need some strong language to be able to like deter North Korea, which is going out on a limb right now, trying to help out Russia. And this is a extreme language as it gets right here. So they go from being very passive to being extreme. It's like, dang, there's no middle ground here. They go from just like real soft and not really strong at all to all of a sudden you're going to go home in a body bag. That's just crazy.
We went from, okay, guys, let's calm down, to literally today, we are going to kill you. It's like there was no like zero,
damn.
there was no ramping up. It literally just went from 0 to 100. Now we're saying that they will return in body bags back to North Korea. It appears that is a very clear statement that, according to what the Ukrainians said today, is actually being followed through on immediately, as some of these North Koreans will already be returning back to the country in body bags. But nevertheless, it does seem as though the United States is starting to pull off the boxing gloves, at least in a sense, and it's starting to get a little bit stronger with the rhetoric. At least the U.S. envoy to the UN did today. And I was also able to see, although I wasn't able to find this one while I was putting out this news right now, that Lloyd Austin, who is the Secretary of Defense of the United States in the moment, also made a very very similar statement today, but for some reason I was not able to find that when I was trying to look for it right now. So at the moment, I'm going to have to annotate my prior statement and say that this was only made by the U.S. envoy to the United Nations. Still a pretty interesting and very pointed sort of a wordage to make to the international forum that is supposedly about making peace. We told them that we're going to be there to start stacking bodies. But nevertheless, moving out of that little bit of news from the U.S. envoy to the UN, it does seem as though the United States may be running out of leash to give to the North Koreans, and we may actually be getting legitimately tired at this point of the continuous and endless escalations that they're conducting against South Korea, and not only that, now directly against the United States, just over about the past half year at this point, or really an entire year if we're speaking about the linear timeline that has been made from the first escalatory measures by North and South Korea up until the present day. But nevertheless, a load of people have been talking about the intercontinental ballistic missile test that was conducted by North Korea today. This is something that, once again, we have to put out. It has not happened for about an entire year at this point. The last time that the North Koreans launched an ICBM, it was launched by the North Koreans on December 18th of 2023, a fairly good time ago. As a matter of fact, it is exactly a year ago. And the fact that they're conducting this nuclear launch, or really ICBM launch, at this point, with everything that's going on the Korean Peninsula, all of the very heated rhetoric that's been going on in between the two countries, and then not only that, very recently, the North Koreans directly starting to threaten the United States, this is clearly supposed to be a threat at us, and also an attempt to show off a new and improved Hwasong intercontinental ballistic missile that not only technically can make it to the United States, it highly likely would make it to the United States if it was to be launched. This is the highest trajectory and the longest flight time that we've ever seen for a Hwasong 19. To give you all a little bit of an idea, that thing was apparently in air for about an hour and 15 to an hour and 30 minutes. To give you a little bit of a perspective on how long that Hwasong was in flight, it would take about 15 minutes for an intercontinental ballistic missile fired from North Korea to reach the continental United States and hit a target on our soil. Just to give you all an idea of how long that flight time is compared to what it would actually need to be able to make it to the United States. It's showing a technological leap of a sort that's been made recently. Maybe not an incredibly large one, but certainly a large number of small adjustments that have been made to the missile and its abilities to be able to get that kind of flight time out of it, that kind of altitude out of it, considering that it did cross the Kármán line. Technically, it was in space. And it's a very interesting thing that the last launch we saw was nowhere close to this, and now this launch is looking far better than the last. And it looks like a lot of people are believing that this was not at all by North Korean intuition and the great leadership and godlike intelligence of the fat blubberknot inside of Pyongyang. It seems as though a lot of people are believing that this came from some sort of an outside source, that this missile did so much better than the last launch did last year around the same time. And it seems as though a lot of people are pointing their fingers towards the Russian Federation. And so while I drop that right there and drop my phone.
Dang, it sounded like a nuke went off on your desk over there.
Man, it did. But nevertheless, a lot of people have been talking about this at the moment, and a load of people are saying that it seems as though it was most likely the Russians that probably helped them out in producing such a advanced and refined missile that we saw in today's test. And so, Matthew, what are people thinking about that, and what are you thinking about as well? Does everyone think at this point, it looks like a lot of people do, that the Russians are behind these pretty decent improvements on the Hwasong ICBM, or was it the North Koreans' amazing intuition and intelligence that was able to produce this today? And what are you thinking about that as well?
So it looks like about 72% of the audience believe that Russia did have a hand in the sudden jump and leap in technology for the ICBMs inside of North Korea. And they say that is the reason why things improved, is because Russia has either given their scientists over or they've shared nuclear technology that North Korea previously did not have. While 11% said we need more intel, and only 8% said North Korea is simply getting better. And honestly, like I can see the argument that people would make saying that they could get better, but the catch is this is a little bit too much too fast. They can't get this good this fast. That's not the way things work, and especially not in North Korea, where they basically cut knowledge off from the rest of the world. there's no way they improved that fast without some sort of outside help. And I'm actually with the 73%. I think that's probably why they improved. Russia probably lended them their scientists or something like that to visit their laboratories to help increase the flight time. And also, they might have even shared some fuel recipes to maybe increase the altitude and also the power output of these rockets, because this is a sudden jump in technology and there has to be a reason for it. So I'm with the 73%. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that I am certainly with the 73%, the overwhelming majority of y'all that said that the Russians most likely improved the North Koreans' ICBM abilities. That is certainly what happened. The North Koreans have been very slow with their nuclear program, and since we saw their first nuclear test successfully conducted back around 2007, they have not really made that many massive leaps in such a short amount of time compared to each other. We have seen that there has been an endless amount of rocket launches that were failures. We've seen a decent amount of nuclear weapons that did explode, and it appears that their yields were low, possibly suggesting that the fissile rate is not that high for the kind of radioactive materials that they have inside their nuclear warheads. We have seen that the North Korean nuclear program, while being successful in the fact that it is able to create a boom or able to create a missile that flies, has never done that incredibly well or wildly successfully. The fact that the last launch this year was a somewhat success, the launch this year at this time in this situation is far better. It does show that the only variable that could have changed in the background is the opening of relations with the Russian Federation, and in that fact, they are starting to provide a far larger amount of I guess you could say missile technology, if you want to call it that, to the North Koreans to help them out in producing a potent and dangerous nuclear weapons delivery system that now really does threaten the United States completely. The thing about this, and I gotta say this again, is that North Korean missiles were able to reach the United States for quite some time at this point, really for about the past 8 years or so. The problem with that, though, is that they had a high unreliability rate, and from what we would understand, the North Koreans would not be able to launch a large amount of these missiles, and they would even make it into the area of the United States. From what we would understand, about 75% of these would end up splashing down somewhere in the northern Pacific or over the area around northern Russia or Alaska and would never really make it into the continental United States. However, this is starting to change things greatly. We're probably going to be seeing that the North Koreans will actually be able to put a serious threat towards the United States, that they will be able to strike and destroy major cities or military installations inside of the area of the United States because they now have a potent and very reliable nuclear delivery system, the Hwasong-18 or the Hwasong-19, as we're seeing in this last test. And that does make things incredibly concerning. So going off of that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least with the kind of imminent danger that North Korea is posing to the United States at the moment, and the kind of situations that we may be seeing changing diplomatically because of that now being taken in note by the United States. But it also seems that we're not taking to this lightly either, as the U.S. envoy to the UN today very clearly said that North Koreans in Ukraine are going to be going home in body bags, which is a lot more of an escalatory statement than we've ever heard before that point. But still, I would have to say that in my opinion, the Russians are the ones that are behind the improved ICBM technology that we just saw today. But moving on from that, and outside of North Korea, there has been a huge amount of news going on in the Middle East as well today, and of course, the lead-ups to the next major precipice of the Iran-Israel proxy war that has been going on at least for some time at this point. And moving all into this area, we have an absolute load to talk about and deal with at this point in this area. We've been able to see that Israeli ground operations have been going on today at a very high pace. We've been able to see a larger amount of footage than we've ever really seen inside of southern Lebanon and even within northern Lebanon of Israeli actions that are attempting to wipe out the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps as well as Hezbollah within the southern area of Beirut. Moving on into the very most southerly areas of Beirut where we do see IDF ground activity, we were able to see that the IDF IDF was present in southern Lebanon, and then the footage was immediately removed because we're not supposed to see it. But we were able to see another bit of footage from South Lebanon today, which was also removed as well. But nevertheless, the footage, if I can summarize it, unfortunately it was removed, was showing Israeli ground forces in the area clearing out buildings and also conducting hostile actions against the IRGC as well as Hezbollah in an attempt to wipe them out and clear them from the area so that way they can begin to move even further north and towards the banks of the Litani River. Both of the footages appear to have been completely wiped at this point, so we don't really get to see them at all. But moving on from that and up into the area of Nabatea, we did get to see that the Israelis did hit and destroy a storage depot within the area of southern Lebanon. And we were able to see that right here in this airstrike.
Call in an airstrike. Send in the drones.
These bombs must be from Iraq, the way they bagged that gas up. Damn, or something like that. But anyways, moving on from that, we did also get to see way north inside of northern Lebanon, which is very interesting. There was a little interesting occurrence that happened today in Baalbek. And we were like, well, what's happening in Baalbek? What's going on in Baalbek? Because you see, something that y'all may or may not know is that we actually did talk to some folks for a time that are from Lebanon. And what they told us, and this is exactly what they said, is that, oh, the bad guys are only in the very, very southerly-most areas of Lebanon. There are no bad guys up in the area around Beirut or Zahle or Baalbek or even further north than that. Everyone up there is just nice, honest Johns that just work a good, honest living. There's no such thing as the IRGC or Hezbollah for that matter in any part of Beirut or really Lebanon up in this direction. And I always found that very interesting because considering that Hezbollah pretty much runs the country as its unofficial government, I was like, isn't it kind of weird that they're just going to be like, you know what, we pretty much run Lebanon, but we're just going to stay in the southern area where Israel can bomb us and obliterate us very easily just because. And also I found that really weird, especially when we saw that the Israelis began to bomb Beirut and some of Hezbollah's top guys, like, you know, number one guys are getting killed in Dania inside of southern Beirut. I was like, isn't that kind of a weird thing? It clearly is showing that they're not just in southern Lebanon, and they aren't. From what we understand, Hezbollah and the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps have an incredibly strong presence within the towns of Baalbek and Zahle. Both of these towns are just across the Syrian border, really in this desert-like expanse on the Syrian side where no one really lives. And this makes it very easy for the IRGC and Hezbollah, pretty much with no one looking in this direction, to be able to smuggle weapons across the border into Baalbek and Zahle and then start shipping those further south and into the area where most of Hezbollah's ground operations are, which is south of Sidon and specifically in a high concentration around the town of Tyre. From what we know, this is really where a lot of the business goes down in between the IRGC and that of the Hezbollah forces in the south. Zahle and Baalbek are largely the trading hubs for these forces to be able to exchange arms and information. And from what we've seen today, the Israelis have also decided to start working on that information finally and are beginning to slam Baalbek with insanely large airstrikes, which we were able to get video footage of right here. And so here is the footage.
غارة عنيفة جدا
Holy moly.
يمكننا أن نشاهدها في هذه الأثناء. سحب الدخان ترتفع من موقع هذه الغارة، بالفعل هي قريبة جدا. يمكننا أن نشاهد
Translation, it was a big
سحب
explosion.
الدخان التي ترتفع.
The translation is, oh my god! Like, that's the translation.
هناك غارة ثانية أيضا يمكننا أن نشاهدها.
أنت أكيد بمحل آمن بهالأثناء.
هي سلسلة هذه الأثناء.
And moving on,
Someone over in the comments said, what happened to the truce? Oh my god. Like, what y'all think happened to the truce, chat? Like, what happened to the truce? Did it just randomly go away, or was it ever really a reality? I don't know.
Chat, are we cooked? And I can give you the answer. The IRGC is cooking. But beyond that, we were able to see the fuel explosion from another angle. Big shout out to the Israelis. They're the only ones that can get you warmer in the desert. But moving on from that and into our last clip that we were able to get here, we were also able to see the resulting fire from up close after the airstrike had been conducted. And boy, oh boy, it looks like a Russian day at the oil facilities. You know what I mean, Matthew? It's just nice and smoky.
Man, it looks like a terrible day. Real quick, Enforcer, real quick. I have to try to see here if I'm correct on this. I'm pretty sure I'm correct, but I'm just going to check my understanding here. The ICBM stands for Intercontinental Ballistic Missile, and that is the actual delivery system for a warhead. That is not a nuclear weapon in itself unless a warhead is attached to the ICBM. Am I correct in that understanding?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, because I had like 3 people in the live chat beating me down over that one. I was like, no, I'm going to have to hold my ground on that one. I'm not an expert on nuclear weapons, but I know an ICBM is only the delivery system part of it. That is not the actual warhead itself.
Yes, if y'all want to know that, let me just make sure to just read y'all the first sentence of what an ICBM is on Wikipedia. Now, of course, Wikipedia is in the Oxford Dictionary, but I have a feeling this will fill in for the large part. An intercontinental ballistic missile, also called an ICBM for short, is a ballistic missile with a range greater than 5,500 kilometers or 3,400 miles, primarily designed for nuclear weapons delivery, delivering one or more thermonuclear warheads. Conventional, chemical, and biological weapons can also be delivered with varying effectiveness, but have never been deployed on ICBMs. ICBMs are only the missile that delivers a nuclear weapon. You can take a nuclear weapon out of an ICBM, and you can put a conventional warhead in this thing. It's just that doesn't make a lot of sense, because if you're going to put all of the expense into building one of these things, why not put the biggest and most powerful weapon that you have in your arsenal on it, considering that it really is supposed to be made to strike and destroy a country with a nuclear weapon, but that is not the entire purpose of the missile. I just want to make sure that that is quite clear. It is not a inherently nuclear weapon. It is primarily designed for that, but it can carry a wide variety of warheads, not just nuclear warheads. So I just want to make sure to put that out there, because I don't know why a lot of people always believe, and this is something that always makes us a little bit hesitant with titles like North Korea launches an ICBM. A lot of people, for some reason, decide to be proud in ignorance and believe that an ICBM must always be nuclear armed and ready with a nuclear warhead on board, which is not the case. An ICBM can be launched without a warhead at all, like we saw today, and that statement would stand true that North Korea did launch an ICBM. It was not nuclear armed, however. It's still an ICBM. But with that, I hope that does address that well. Good job on standing your ground, Matthew, because you were 100% in the right for standing your ground. That is what an ICBM is. It's just a delivery system.
Oh, man, I'll tell you what, the guy who was beating me down over that, and I just had to like make sure I had the correct understanding before I kept going deeper with it. I'm like, this guy is very confident in his position, but he's trying to talk his way out of it now. Just admit defeat. Just admit defeat. He's trying to talk his way out of it and saying, oh well, no, I actually meant this. No. You were confident in what you believe, man. So just own up to it.
I don't know what this is going on in the live chat, but nevertheless, Matthew was right.
That's all.
I was like, Matthew. That absolutely blew me away, man. I didn't know where that was coming from. I was like, what the hell? But anyways, beyond that, the Israeli, getting back into the news that we have right now, the Israeli strike on Baalbek today was pretty significant. And from what we understand, they hit some sort of a large oil depot within the area of Baalbek. And I'll actually see if we can geolocate this really quickly. That was destroyed. That, according to Israeli information, was being used by the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps as well as Hezbollah to be able to fuel and operate their forces that were transiting supplies through this area. However, I am trying to find this at the moment, and it seems as though finding an oil drum in this area, or an oil tank as they're called, is fairly difficult. It's probably blending in with the ground below, so this is making it very, very difficult to find. We can find the Baalbek sorting plant, however, if y'all ever wanted to sort something, they have a place for that. Nevertheless, I'm still not finding any of the oil tanks. Wait a minute. Okay, that's not it either. I was about to say, is that one of those like concrete factories that was set up in like Syria, and then they started having dealings with a certain questionable group? But nevertheless, it is interesting to see that the Israelis did conduct a strike in this area today, and this is coming on top of some very concerning news that the Israelis started to put out, along with American intelligence largely corroborating as well. This was still ongoing as drone alerts were sounded around the area of Haifa, and Israeli interceptors were at work trying to shoot down these incoming Hezbollah drones. And that's the end of that clip. But moving on from that and down into Tel Aviv, we were able to hear today that the Israeli intelligence, along with U.S. intelligence for the large part, is apparently believing that Iran has decided to respond to the Israeli attack before the upcoming U.S. election. This is something that is going to lead us to know that, at least according to the Israelis, we're going to have to be on high alert here for even the next few days beyond our last high alert to be ready at any given moment's notice to start covering the large exchange that will be happening once again in between Iran and Israel. We are awaiting at this moment to see what this strike will consist of, and we really won't know that until the strike is actually conducted, but we do have a pretty good idea that we are going to be looking for some key elements before this strike is conducted. We've seen these strikes a couple of times before at this point, and if we ever start to hear anything like there is a NOTAM issued, sometimes there is no NOTAM issued, or we start to see a little bit of a heavier amount of U.S. air activity in the area, or Israeli air activity, at least on flight radars or any kind of a flight transponder system like flight radar, we will know that there's most likely going to be an Iranian strike coming in very soon at that point, because we usually only see heavy amounts of coalition air activity in this area when the Iranian strike is literally about to happen at that point. So we are going to be waiting to see when that will occur, but it seems as though a lot of people are kind of questioning a little bit the validity of these statements from the Israeli and American intelligence today. And Iran did vow to hit Israel with definitive and painful responses to the recent retaliatory attack that Israel conducted just a little while ago. And a lot of people have been putting in their thoughts. And a lot of people are saying that Iran will launch a major attack. Others are saying that Iran will launch a smaller attack, something more akin to the size of the Iranian government. It's getting a little bit smaller by the day, or at least Hezbollah is. Some others are saying that Iran will not launch an attack at all, and some are a little unsure and undecided, but still wanted to cast their vote in the poll, and so they put in an answer nonetheless. But still, a lot of people are talking about this at the moment, and it seems as though there's a bit of a camp that believes, well, pretty much everyone's believing at this point, an attack will happen, but it seems as though people are divided about the size and scale of this upcoming attack that the Iranians will launch against the Israelis. And Matthew, what are people really thinking about that, and what are you thinking about it as well?
So about 47% of the people said Iran will launch a major attack, while 33% said Iran will launch a smaller attack, not as large as expected, and 10% said Iran will not launch an attack whatsoever. And on this one, I gotta say, or remember, that Israel just announced about a day or two ago that they just remembered that Netanyahu's house was attacked about 2 weeks ago, and they forgot to respond to that one, the attack from Iran with the drones on Netanyahu's house. So they're going to hit Iran again. So now I think Iran maybe or may not have responded before that. They were going to try to let things go, but Israel is going to rightfully come back and teach Iran a second lesson, because the first lesson was honestly kind of mid. It wasn't that really severe in my opinion. So Israel's coming back for a second round to give them the 1-2 knockout punch. And Iran is getting scared. So they're going to try to start threatening Israel again and saying it's going to be a definitive and painful response if you continue out with your current plans to attack us once again. So I would say this: Iran is going to try to launch a major attack, but the key question is, how much do they actually have left in their stockpiles of their missiles and also their attack ability to actually launch an attack against Israel? Because they've largely used up a lot of their air defense, and most of their S-300 systems have been knocked out. So I'm not sure what Iran's expecting to do here, because once Israel attacks a second time, it's going to be really, really foul for Iran because they don't have much air defense left. So I'm largely with the 47%. Contingent on knowing what they actually have left. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would also have to be with the 47%. I also think that it will be a major attack that is conducted against the state of Israel, even if they are largely running out of supplies and equipment to be able to launch a strike. From what we know, the last strike was pretty debilitating to the Iranians' ability to conduct offensive and defensive actions in the skies over the Middle East. From what we know, a large amount of the S-300 surface-to-air missile systems around Tehran and Shiraz were knocked out in the last attack, along with the only two major factories inside of Iran that produce solid rocket fuel for most of their weaponry were also knocked out as well, along with a large number of drone factories on top of that, which would pump out Shahed 136s for the Iranians to use against the state of Israel. pretty much all of their offensive abilities in the long term have been knocked out at this point. They are not able to produce solid rocket fuels to be able to create and produce new rockets to fire at the state of Israel. And not only that, the amount of drones that they have will not be augmented or reinforced with a continuous supply of drones into the future, as most of those factories around Tehran specifically have been destroyed. So for the large part, we are understanding that while this next attack could be big, because they still could have a large amount of ballistic missiles and drones in their inventory, the next preceding attacks after that are going to be considerably small. And so right now the Iranians do have an option. They can either string out these attacks to be smaller in size, much easily defeated by the coalition over the skies of the Middle East in these upcoming attacks, because there will be more beyond this one alone, or they could try and put all of their chips together for one last big attack, which will be this one, and they will launch all of these missiles and drones at Israel, overwhelm the airspace like they did last time, and hopefully, this time in the Iranian mind, the missiles will actually work and hit the targets that they were intended to hit, instead of every other time where they pretty much missed the target by like a couple of hundred feet and caused no real damage to the actual target they were supposed to be hitting. That could be what the Iranians are wanting to do this time, and I do believe that, considering that the Iranians saw in the last attack that they conducted on Israel that an overwhelming volume of missiles and drones being fired, really just missiles, can actually overwhelm the coalition and get some missiles through the air defense, they're probably going to try and vie for putting all of their eggs in one basket, going for one more massive attack, and hopefully this one actually will debilitate Israel instead of just leaving Iran's skies open, along with really no offensive weaponry from that point, for the Israelis to obliterate them with well on into the future. Nevertheless, regardless of how this goes, we do know that the Israelis have laid out the groundwork for the next airstrikes to be conducted are going to be very deadly, from what we would know, or at least incredibly damaging to the Islamic Republic of Iran. From that point forward, let's just go with the idea that a lot of people are going with at this point, that it's going to be a major attack against Israel. Let's go with the idea that they fire off most of the missiles that they have left, maybe even most of the drones they have left, and while most of those, or some of those, will make it through the air defense, they're not going to destroy or damage anything critical inside of Israel. This means that the Israelis, especially considering that there may possibly be casualties at this point inside the state of Israel, are going to say that at this point, they're lifting all the floodgates, and they're probably hoping by that point that the United States will say, do whatever you wish to the Islamic Republic of Iran, and they will have very good justification to do so at that point. If that is the case, we probably will see that the Israelis will start launching massive air operations against the Islamic Republic of Iran, targeting and destroying major facilities within Tehran, within Isfahan, where the nuclear research facilities are, and most likely throughout the remainder of the country, where there are a large amount of oil refineries and other kinds of oil production targets to hit and destroy, that not only would pretty much completely decapitate Iran's nuclear abilities in the foreseeable future, but it will also completely decapitate the Iranian economy and possibly the Iranian government, all in one large air attack that would be conducted by the Israelis in response to the upcoming Iranian attack. That may be the kind of hypothetical we're looking at this point. Or it may be the other, where the Iranians conduct a smaller attack and try and conserve their resources and equipment, where they can conduct multiple small attacks instead of just one big final attack before the airstrikes start coming in and just largely obliterating most of the strategic targets throughout the Islamic Republic. But nevertheless, it is a very interesting sort of a situation to see, and we are largely waiting to see what the Iranian strike will look like. Only time will tell, and beyond our analysis with pretty much everything that we could say and all the hypotheticals that we can throw out, nothing will really let us know what the real deal looks like until the real deal happens. But I also, really quickly, did see something in the chat, and I always have to ask this because I'm always open to hearing different opinions. Someone, called Ace is High, simply said, your analysis is bad. I always love comments like that because they never let you know how it's bad, so please try and explain why it's bad. We will be waiting for that answer.
But he's high, though.
He is high, but I do want the answer, nevertheless. I like, regardless whether he's high or not, he's decided to say it's just all wrong. I want to know why. But I'm sure that we're about to hear something very interesting, but nevertheless, we will see. But anyways...
Whack is whack.
It is. Aw, man. I would personally know from experience. Aw, man. But anyways, moving on from that, though, one thing that we do have to say is that regardless of what's going to be happening against the Islamic Republic of Iran, they're probably going to be remaining about the same size. But one country that probably will not be remaining the same size is Russia. Many people know that the Russian Federation is going through a large amount of woes and issues at the moment. Economic issues, military issues, political issues. Of course, not getting into their domestic politics or anything, but at least inside of Russia, we do understand there's a fair little bit of bubbling, at least in the lower echelons, that there are some aspiring politicians in Russia that may want to seize an unfortunate situation here in the near future. And for this reason, Russia may shrink. And we will never know how much they do shrink, but many people have started to say the phrase, make Russia small again. And this is largely coming from a t-shirt that President Zelensky wore in a presidential address of his just a couple of days ago. And now, you too can say, make Russia small again in a big way. With the brand new official Enforcer store, Make Russia Small Again t-shirts.
It's merch time.
Man, it's merch time, and we gotta mercilessly plug this thing because we only have until Saturday to plug it. But nevertheless, the Make Russia Small Again t-shirts are available for a limited time here on the Enforcer store. Made out of 100% US cotton, these are a comfortable t-shirt made by Gildan, an amazing company that has done amazing things in the past with t-shirts. They also are very nice. They come in multiple different colors at only $25 a piece for a custom t-shirt. That's not that bad at all. And also, on top of that, 10% of the profits from all of the sales that we make on these shirts, to make sure that I word that properly, will be donated to United 24 at the end of the limited merch run. These things are just amazing. We love the Make Russia Small Again shirts, and they just come in a wide variety of colors. They're beautiful. They come in black, navy, military green, charcoal, sand, coral silk, and last but not least, tropical blue for those folks who may want to believe in U.S. air supremacy from the island of Guam. You have a shirt for that occasion. If you also want them in different sizes, please do not worry. We do not believe in the one-size-fits-all that some other people in communist countries like North Korea believe, where the starving people are given shirts that are for triple XL. We have multiple different sizes, from small to 5XL. You can pretty much find just about any size that fits you, and we ship to many different countries around the world. Of course, we ship to the good old United States of America, but we also ship to Australia, Austria, Belgium, Canada, the Czech Republic, Denmark, Finland, France, Germany, Hong Kong, just in case we want to try and get one into China, Ireland, Israel, Italy, Japan, Malaysia, the Netherlands, New Zealand, Norway, Portugal, Singapore, South Korea, Spain, Sweden, Switzerland, the United Arab Emirates, and the UK as well. So you can pretty much get these just about anywhere and everywhere. And they are just absolutely wonderful. And oh, did I just hear that from Enforcer Matt? Did Enforcer Matt ask, well, how in the world do you get one of these amazing and bespoke t-shirts from officialenforcerstore.com? Well, Matthew, that was a great question that you never asked. If you were wanting to try and get one of these t-shirts, you would simply have to go to officialenforcerstore.com. You can actually see that up here at the top left corner of the screen. And not only that, if you click on the link in the description below, you yourself can go directly to this website and get onto this site and be able to get your own shirts. And you can get as many of them as you want. You can get 5 of them, 10 of them, 50 of them, thousands of them. The limit is your imagination. You can get literally any and every of these things. So please make sure to go
Jack, just buy your shirt. I mean, come on, you know the thing. Just press order, add to cart, you know.
And if you order right now, we will throw in a big thanks. And so with that, I hope that y'all do get these shirts.
Oh, also, Enforcer, by the way, like real quick, if anyone's curious about where the inspiration for this shirt came from, this is obviously our version of the shirt. And also, Enforcer, I would never ask how to get a shirt because I'm literally the one who set up the store. I know exactly how to get a shirt. But anyways, could you pull up a picture of Zelensky wearing the shirt on his nightly stream or nightly little speech thing real quick? So that way people can see the source of it.
Yes, I can. And so let me go and get the shirt. And here we go. Here it is. The Make Russia Small Again shirt.
See, it's in a bit of a different font. I honestly went with a different font because I'm not a huge fan of that one right there that Zelensky was wearing, but it's inspired by the shirt that Zelensky wore on his nightly speech, which was very cool. I like this slogan on it as well. And we put the Enforcer logo below it as well, instead of the map of, I think it's Muscovy or something like that below the text there. But it's very nice. A very soft shirt, a very good long-lasting shirt, and I agree. You should get one.
And y'all all should get one. Of course, if you want to. I'm not going to push it. We have to plug it, though, because if we don't plug it, folks won't even know that we're running a limited edition run, so that's why we're plugging it. But nevertheless, this has actually inspired us to also come up with an entire line of these that will remain within this channel's pro-American and pro-Western messaging. In case you all are wondering, what kind of different variants could we make of this? In the future, we do have these plans. If this one is very popularly received, we will be making these as well. Make China West Taiwan again. We will also be doing another one, which is called Make Iran Persia again. A couple of interesting ideas. Make North Korea Korea again. Stuff like that. We're going to be doing that for pretty much every single enemy or rival of the United States of America, so that way we can make sure to get across the message, and hopefully get out some nice shirts in the meantime as well. But of course, if you want to get these shirts outside the whole entire skit that I did right there with the sales pitch, you can go in the link in the description below. It's the first link down there tonight to officialenforcerstore.com, and you can get these. Of course, please make sure to get one while you can. We are expecting that this limited edition run will end on Saturday. But if we see that there is a huge demand, I'm already seeing some people asking to extend this a little bit, we might extend the limited edition run just a little bit into the next week. Usually, though, we like to begin and end these before the next Sunday night fundraiser, so that way people aren't trying to, battle to either donate their money to a nonprofit where the help is greatly appreciated, or to this channel and getting a t-shirt and supporting our channel and helping us keep this thing running. That's usually why we make them from Tuesday to Saturday, so that way it doesn't really conflict with the Sunday night fundraisers, and we don't have folks having to kind of make decisions on where they want their money to go, either to us or in a nonprofit to Ukraine. But with that, I hope that y'all do enjoy these shirts, because we're already getting a couple of them, and I cannot wait to wear them, because we love them. I think they're just great. But nevertheless, I hope that does at least address that merciless plug incredibly well. And that was absolutely merciless, Matthew. More merciless than the U.S. envoy to the United Nations today. But nevertheless, I understand that we have an insane load of questions, Matthew. I mean, a nutty load of questions. A long-lasting load of questions. And what do we have, Matthew?
All right, so our first super chat question of the night is going to go to Hawk, who's a channel legend who threw in a massive $200 donation. And that is very appreciated, Hawk, and thank you very much for supporting the channel. Sadly, we do not have a comment attached to it, so there's nothing to address. But thank you very much once again, Hawk, for that support. And Enforcer, what say you?
And I gotta say a massive thanks to you, Hawk, for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. You didn't throw in a comment, but the support means a great deal to us, and I cannot thank you enough for enjoying this channel to support it that massively. You're helping us to be able to keep the lights on here behind the scenes. You're helping us to be able to do this as a full-time job, and if it was not for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to be here doing this right now. And so I got to give you a massive thanks once again for that. And I also have to say, I hope that everyone here gives a huge thanks to Hawk as well. We've had a load of people supporting the channel tonight in massive super chats. To be entirely honest, I've never seen this many massive super chats in a single night recently, like for a good bit. And I don't really know why people are massively supporting it tonight of all nights. It's very nice of y'all though, and we do thank y'all for it. But the folks that y'all should thank for this show running aren't some magical sponsor off in the corner that's telling you to shave your balls. And it's not like the AdSense running on YouTube where you get it like a Chevy ad or something. It is these folks right here. Hawk is actually one of the people who is helping us to keep this channel running tonight. We never ask for viewer support through super chats. It's something that people can always do though, and the folks that are doing that make this channel possible for every single one of y'all. We do this as a full-time job, and so the only way that we're able to support ourselves and make a living doing this is through folks' direct support. And a person like Hawk with that kind of massive support is really helping us to be able to keep the bills paid behind the scenes and keep the lights on, so that way we can keep this channel running for an incredibly long time. And I got to thank you so much once again for the amazing support, Hawk, and helping this channel to keep on rolling, because if it was not for folks like you, we would not be able to make this thing possible. And so huge thanks to you once again. I hope that addressed that incredibly well, and with that, we are on to the next one.
All right. And our second one here is going to go to Dustin Mayo, who's also a channel legend. He's been around for a very long time. And thank you very much, Dustin, for the $100 donation. And we appreciate it very much as well. And also, did not leave a comment, but he did type 100 in the comment box. But thank you very much, Dustin, once again, for that support. Very generous. And Enforcer, what say you?
And I got to thank you for the massive support as well, Dustin Mayo, because if it was not for folks like you, we would not be able to make this channel possible and keep this thing running. And I got to thank you once again for throwing in another huge super chat tonight. You threw in a load of massive ones tonight, and I got to thank you again tonight, because folks like you, like we always say, are the people who are responsible for keeping this channel running. And I hope a lot of people are hearing this tonight, because some people always go, why do you read off every super chat? Which I don't really get. It's like, why wouldn't you? Like, what douchebag doesn't read off the super chats? Like, where in the world, like, I really want to know though, like, where have you all gone? Like, some of y'all gone, at least, where y'all think that it's rude to read off super chats. Like, I would love to know, because, like, to me, considering that these are the folks who actually make this possible for us to do as a job and for y'all to hear the news every night, like, I believe that they're owed a massive shout out, every single person, whether it's $1 super chat or a $500 super chat, which is the cap that YouTube allows. Each and every single person deserves a massive shout out and a thanks for that, because they're the ones making this channel possible. And I always got to give a huge thanks to you as well, Dustin Mayo, for supporting this channel tonight and helping it to keep on running, because if it was not for amazingly kind folks like you and everyone else who supported tonight, we would not be able to make this thing possible. It's not a huge number of people, actually, interestingly enough. I think we only have like 20 super chats so far, 25 or something. There's been about 120,000 views so far, but those few people who support this channel make this news possible for so many people, and that's why we always give you all a massive thanks. But with that, huge thanks to you once again, Dustin Mayo. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the final question of the segment, and then we're going to be moving on into the rest of the news that we have tonight inside of Ukraine.
All right, so this one is going to go to George Lambert. This is the last super chat of the first segment, and George put in a $100 donation.
Dang.
And huge shout out to you for that massive support as well. And he said, thanks, guys, and keep going.
And thank you so much for the support and wanting us to keep this thing running. I gotta say that I thank you so much for enjoying this channel massively and wanting to support it as well. I do not know what has brought in the wave. It is a literal wave of super chats tonight, but we are still greatly appreciative of them, and we thank you so much for enjoying this channel a great deal and supporting it and helping us to keep this thing running, because if it was not for folks like you, we would not be able to be here right now running this channel and making this thing possible. And so a massive thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address it incredibly well, and we will keep this thing rocking on. And so with that, long live the Lee Spring Army. The Lee Spring Army will never die. And with that, it's time for us to start moving on into... Actually, I just remembered, folks, we actually have a little tidbit of news that came out of the United Kingdom today. Oh, buddy, oh, howdy. Y'all finally made it into the news, folks, over there in the UK. I hope that y'all are enjoying this, because we don't really get to mention the UK much. Usually it's only when they do like the first of things, like providing the storm shadows and such things like that. So the UK doesn't really make it into the news circuit that much. Really, no Western country makes it into the news circuit a lot, even America. But still, y'all did make it into the news circuit today. Yay! But it wasn't really a good thing, but we will be moving up into the area of Cumbria to be able to tell y'all why. Up in the area, and also I did not make up that name. I know a lot of people are gonna be, he said it, and I did not make up that name. That's the actual name of this area. Up here, near the town of Cockermouth, is an area called Cumbria. I'm not kidding. It's literally called that. It's in the, the Lake District National Park is inside of this region of the United Kingdom, but up here in this area, and I wasn't able to find specifically where the submarine pen was, at least before the stream, because I kind of had to give it a cursory glance before we just kicked this whole thing off and started. Wait a minute. Hold up, Matthew. I think I may have just found it. You know what, Matthew? If any place would be it, it probably is this one. I don't know why I would be thinking that, but it's really just the fact that they have a port here, and I didn't see a port throughout the rest of this area.
You know, if you want to, you can punch in the Bay Systems shipyard, which is the manufacturer that runs that shipyard, and it should show you where it is along the coast.
Let's see here. Shipyard. They have a couple of those, actually, so I'll have to put it in UK and then see if we can find it. It is in Barrow in Furnace, so it is down here. Let me see if I can find the specific area, because it didn't look like it was directly in the city. It looked like it was maybe just a little north, and it doesn't look like it's... So it's somewhere down here in Barrow in Furnace, and so, it's not at the Dock Museum. It's somewhere around here, most likely, if I had to take a good shot at that. Let me see if I can just get, like, the specific location down. Oh, well, look, they have pictures here. Let me just take y'all over here to this picture. This maybe will show y'all what I'm talking about, but this is where the United Kingdom refits or outfits its Vanguard class nuclear powered submarines. They're actually pretty cool looking if you ever look at a Vanguard class. I like them a lot, but that looks, Matthew, a lot like this building right here, because it has this little like spillway area in front of it, and you can see the sub on that little spillway area. So that might actually, you know what, maybe we can see it from the bridge. Money. I got that thing on the money.
That is it.
That was
That's
it.
a very
Yeah.
ominous looking shipyard too.
Man, it's just at the end of this little inlet in the bay. It's like the most ominous looking building. Like, dude, they're running the movie 1984 out of that thing, the way it looks. But nevertheless, this building actually did catch on fire today. It wasn't really a major fire, and we really don't know the specific reason why the fire began, but we did want to throw it out there because we were not entirely sure, at least when this news came out, whether it may possibly be some form of sabotage or something along those lines. But we will be showing you all the clips that came out of this. Just to make sure that we read this exactly as it came out, I will be making sure to read the exact wordage that Nexta put out, so that way we don't confuse any facts by different wordage. A fire has broken out in the UK at a shipyard where the latest nuclear submarines are being built. Police in the county of Cumbria, you see I did not make that up right there, giggity, reported a major fire at the site of defense company Bay Systems in Barrow-in-Furness. Law enforcement officials said 2 people were hospitalized and there is no nuclear threat at the moment. Although that is a little questionable coming from British authorities. If you know anything about like the Windscale disaster, that's a little questionable coming from. But anyways, the Bay Systems shipyard in the northwest of the country is the second largest indoor shipbuilding facility of its kind in Europe, according to the company. The BBC writes that the yard is currently building 4 new Dreadnought-class nuclear-powered submarines, which are due to replace the Vanguard-class submarines in the early 2030s, and the last of the Royal Navy's 7 new Astute-class nuclear-powered submarines. Bay Systems is the UK's largest defense company and one of the largest in the entire world. But do you all want to see a Dreadnought-class nuclear-powered submarine? Like, that just sounds cool. And I've never actually seen one of those myself. So let's see if we have any design plans or anything like that that are out in the public where we could just take a look at them. And we really don't have much, but we do have this interesting infographic here, and I gotta be honest with y'all, it just kind of looks like a big torpedo.
It kind of does. It really looks like a torpedo with some interior space.
Yeah, it's like a, you know, it's very interesting, man, because either this is wildly simplified or this is actually what's going to look like in service. But this thing kind of almost looks cartoonish. You know, like even if you were to try and realize that into like a realistic depiction, it's going to look a little cartoony, like just being honest in my opinion. I honestly like the Vanguard class for its aesthetic a lot better. I just think it looks cooler, like in my opinion. Let me actually go show y'all a Vanguard class, just to give y'all an idea of what it's like being compared against. The Vanguard just looks cool as hell. Like, I just think it's an amazingly cool looking submarine. Like, look at that thing, man. That thing's just like ominous.
That is ominous. I actually like that one a lot.
Yeah, I don't know about the Dreadnought class. Like, when I heard Dreadnought class, I was like, oh, dang, that sounds cool as hell. I was like, that would be amazing to, like, see a good look at. And then, no, it just kind of looks like a big torpedo with a really streamlined sail for some reason. I was like, that's interesting. But anyways, let's see here. Someone said image not to scale. Oh man, you thinking I'm going to be like Zoolander in here or whatever it was, where it's like, what are you building? A submarine for ants? Like, nah, like it's obviously not to scale, but still, I don't know. It doesn't have the same ominous look that the Vanguard class had, in my opinion. But of course, it's technologically better for sure. But I don't know. At least aesthetically, it's just not that scary, in my opinion. But anyways, moving on from that. And that holds side note, here are the actual videos of the fire that broke out in the area. And so, without further ado, here it is. And we can hear the McDonald's fryer is ready. That's some pretty black smoke coming out of there. Moving on from that, though, and into our next clip, we also got to see the fire from another angle. We can also hear the fire alarms going off. Also, Matthew, we can see smoke damage up there near the roof in several places, probably where ventilation is. So this thing, it looks to be a little sizable, actually.
Yeah, it does look sizable. I had heard reports that it was pretty much contained, but it looks like it was a pretty large fire indeed. It wasn't necessarily like a little campfire. It looks like it was consuming a good part of the building.
Yeah, it doesn't look like it broke the structure or compromised it, at least in the clips we're seeing so far, but it certainly was a sizable fire inside the building. And so moving on from that clip and into our next one, also Mostra Lab said conning tower. Let me make sure that I get the terminology correct on that. Submarine sail. Let me see here. Sail. Okay, so let's see here. Submarine tower. I got it right. Okay, I have to show this because, yes, it is called a conning tower, but I believe the actual terminology for it, and if Walter A. Lakota, our LSA, our OGL Simboson is here tonight, he might be able to back me up on this, but from what I understand, the sail is the conning tower. Like, that's another terminology or name for the conning tower is sail. So I believe that is called the sail. So just putting that out there, just in case it is or isn't. And also Hokey Redneck said sail is a conning tower. So I was correct in saying that. I did get my my maritime lingo down correctly today. But nevertheless, we can see the building on fire from a distance inside a Barrow and Furnace. And then we can also see another picture, much like the one I was showing a little while ago, of the Vanguard class. Well, actually, that's not the Vanguard. I believe that's actually the Astute class submarine that was outside of the building a little while ago. But nevertheless, it is still unfortunate to see that this fire broke out, but we don't really know a lot about it beyond the fire breaking out itself. That's really all we know. But moving on from that, I also, really quickly, Matthew, I'm interested, what does Barrow in Furnace look like? Huh.
It looks pretty nice. It looks very, very British-esque, because it is Britain.
It looks kind of posh. Someone's about to pop in and be like, I'm from Barrow and Furnace. It's hell on earth. And then I'm going to be like, is it really, though? Like, I'm going to be like, is it, though? Because it looks really nice. Like, it's actually gorgeous out there. Britain's...
Oh, yeah. I love the British coast. Like, the British coast is just beautiful.
Man, it really is. It looks a lot like the Californian coast, to be entirely honest, in some places. Like, this looks like the area around Vandenberg Space Force Base.
Yeah, it kind of does. It has a California coast kind of look to it.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting. Also, we can see a war memorial right here, most likely to the First World War. But anyways, moving on from that, we are now going to be heading out of the area of Cumbria, or Barrow and Furnace specifically, and we're going to now be moving on into Poland, where we were able to hear a little quick statement today. Also, before we move on from that, though, I do have to make sure that we circle back and talk about this one topic, at least about the fire that happened at the base systems plant in Barrow and Furnace. But the UK's major nuclear submarine shipyard did explode into fire last night, and a lot of people are wondering, is it Russian sabotage? And it seems as though a lot of people are saying yeah. Some people are saying possibly, a small amount of people are saying no, but it seems like a decent amount of people are leaning towards this may have been Russian sabotage, considering that we had already heard back in the past that the Russians were going to attempt sabotage of some key military and defense installations inside of Europe. But still, Matthew, what are people thinking about this, and what are you thinking about it as well?
So it looks like 53% of the audience said yes, it is very likely Russian sabotage, while 23% said possibly, but I need some more info, and 12% said no, it's not likely Russian sabotage. And I gotta say, with it being at the nuclear submarine shipyard, a very big shipyard, which is operated apparently by base systems from the looks of it, I would say this does have a very suspicious look to it. So I'm going to need to hear some more info as to why the fire broke out. If I'm going to be with the 23%, I'll say possibly, but we need some more information first. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say we're going to need some more information. Obviously, we would lean towards, honestly, in my opinion, because of bias, that it probably is Russian sabotage, but we don't have enough clear proof at this point that the facility was insecure or unsecure to a point that a saboteur could get into the building and start a fire. So we're not entirely sure at the moment. We will be waiting to get some more additional information, but for now, I'm largely undecided on that one. It just appears to be an unfortunate incident until we get any information to show otherwise. Nevertheless, in Warsaw, we did get to hear that the Polish had made a request to the United States to get permission to shoot down Russian missiles that are flying over Ukraine. We don't really expect it to go anywhere, but still, interesting thing to note. Meanwhile, inside of Moscow, we did get to see that one of the largest electrotechnical factories inside of Russia has caught on fire today. It was a little loud. I'm telling you, whoever this guy is going around, man, like burning down these buildings in Russia, he has to have a criminal record, but it still can't be as big a criminal record as the hot dog man. Aw, man. Aw, man. But moving on from that and out of that area, it's now time for us to get down into Kursk, where we have heard that, alas, North Koreans are being sent home in body bags, according to the Ukrainians, as we were able to hear that the first North Koreans have been found, supposedly dead, by the Ukrainians, or at least they were deadened by the Ukrainians, and then the Ukrainians refound them, and then they were declared dead. The reports that 7 North Koreans have been killed on the front line in the Kursk region of Russia. 1 North Korean soldier surrendered to the Ukrainians. We do not have any corroboration beyond this point of this claim, so we were going to be waiting for video and picture evidence to come out, but we were able to see a supposed North Korean soldier in the area near to an Abkhazian, who is actually from an illegally controlled area of Georgia. But here's the clip. This is apparently the North Korean, and I don't really know if he is or isn't, because it's a little weird that the guy has his face covered with a hoodie where you can't see most of it. But anyways, here's the clip.
Друзья, Абхазия, Корея, друзья, я, ты.
I don't know what they even said.
What the hell? This is the most weird conversation I've ever seen. The guy said something like, "Oh, what?" He said, "Wall." It's like, what the hell did he just say?
Dude, he spoke. Dude, that North Korean guy was speaking like wolf or something. Like that guy was like, Abkhazia, Korea, Drushba. You know, and he was like trying to say friend, and then the Korean went. It's like, okay, it's like, all right, whatever. like, man, like
he got that dog in him.
Man, he got that dog in him. But one thing that did not have the dog in him today, Matthew, was the Russian offensive, because it went badly in this area from the footage that we got. So let me show you all the clips. Here's a Russian assault column moving on its way towards a Ukrainian position in the wide open of a field. Many of y'all know how that goes. And we can see them traveling on their way, firing at the trees. And we see them continuing to fire, but soon they will not be the ones firing, they will be the ones on fire. And we can see them still continuing to move up. We can now see them all stopping at a good distance away, and it appears that this BTR is getting absolutely lit up by some sort of a heavy machine gun in the trees, and it's starting to catch on fire as the rounds are penetrating the armor and starting to cause some damage. We can see the BTR is continuing to fire, however, as they are continuing to try and dismount their soldiers. This BTR is a little enthusiastic and has gotten very close. A mistake it may learn from. When you see the first BTR has dismounted some of its soldiers, and they're immediately hitting the deck. We can see the BTR now trying to stop and turn around. We can now see it turning around here. As the Russians are getting back inside, some more have dismounted. We now see the BTR spinning away and trying to run for the hills. And we can also see the Russians' infantry are running to the hills with them. So it looks as though this attack already failed pretty much from the onset. Moving on from that, we were also able to see the 80th Brigade of the Ukrainian Armed Forces also hitting some Russians as well with their drones. And look at this, it's a fresh building, and it's no longer fresh. And we have a meme. And the building's gone. The whole roof is gone. Holy moly! Escadrone. It's the real deal. But moving on from that and out of the Kursk area, it appears that the Russians didn't have that great of a time today. And moving on from that, we also got to hear that Zelensky said that they should have taken the nuclear power plant at the beginning of the offensive. He apparently regrets that was not something that the Ukrainians did at the start. But at this point, one has to live with their choices, and the Ukrainians are not in control of the nuclear power plant. Anyways, moving on from that, we were able to see Ukrainian Leopard 2A4 in the flesh today with Contact 1 ERA to boot all over the freaking tank. They love Contact 1 ERA in Ukraine. It's like the be all fix all. I don't know why they think it's the most amazing thing. The Russians also think it as well. But ballistically, it's not really adding a lot of protection, to be entirely honest with y'all. Like maybe against anti-tanks, weapons like an RPG-7. I mean, maybe a little, but in most places, like on the front plates of the turret armor, it's not really adding any protection at all. But moving on from that, and into our next clip, we also got to see a Russian vehicle. It's a thingamabob, and y'all want to see it? I know y'all want to see it. Here it is.
Вот наша боевая тачка,
we can see the exposed engine in the living room, and it's a very interesting kind of a visceral experience to just see an engine with no hood. I guess you could say that the Russians are just unfamiliar with the hood.
Ага, ебать.
When you see it is a Lada, meaning that this thing is most likely an ancient survivor of Soviet times.
Вот 200-й грузим.
Oh, and they're loading
Сегодня
body
10
bags.
собрали ее.
That's fun. And when you see them showing off the back of it, and we can see a destroyed BTR over there. Unfortunate. It's just overall a very sad thing. It's very sad indeed. But moving on from that really quickly, we're also going to be moving on to this thing. I don't know what it is, but it still was interesting. It appears that they added dog food cans, fishing net, and then some pieces of sheet metal to the side of this tank. And they've created some sort of a ungodly abomination that will not only scare the Ukrainians, but also the Russians themselves, as they will most likely be thinking that this is the reincarnation of some sort of a Slavic demonic spirit. Nevertheless, we will be waiting to see how this thing performs on the battlefield. We expect it to be destroyed most likely within 5 minutes after the point of contact. It is pretty ugly. And we're believing that this is so ugly that Hot Dog Man may actually try and hit up this thing, or hit on it at least a little bit. But nevertheless, we are going to be moving on from this thing. We don't really know what that was supposed to be, and we're going to be moving on into the Russian casualty reports. But before I move on into that, I do want to make sure that my old and trusted co-host, Enforcer Matt, is here with us at the moment. We're going to be waiting for him to rejoin us, because he is currently actually not here at the moment. We are trying to deal with the lag difficulties on the call in the background, and if y'all wouldn't mind really quickly, I would like to actually check my task manager, and the only way I can do that is by throwing up the intro, so that way sensitive computer information isn't seen on air. So everyone give me just a brief momento, and I will be making sure to return, hopefully with Enforcer Matt, so that way we can get on into the Russian casualty report. Don't worry, we're not going anywhere. It's just a brief little break just for a moment, so that way we can see what's going on in the background. So give me just a second, and I will be back.
בחרמון נמס השלג בחצי הלילה, בחרמון זורם לו פלג בחצי הליל, אבא שם על הר השלג בחצי הלילה, שר שירים על נס בפלא עם כל ישראל.
Okay, folks, we are, of course, still waiting for Enforcer Matt at the moment. I do believe, I say, and it looks as though Enforcer Matt has returned. Why, hello there.
Hey, yes, I'm back. I think it's barely fixed something, but we'll just have to run with it.
We will indeed, my brother. We will indeed. But nevertheless, we do have the absolutely amazing casualty report that we were able to receive today. And my heavens, brother, it is a true miracle. Would you like to see? I know you would. Holy moly!
Oh man. And that is crazy. We got one Bobcat out here, though. Only one, but at work. Tell us more about those losses of those troops, though. That's crazy.
And the losses are looking absolutely exquisite, with 1,560 Russian soldiers wounded and killed over the past 24 hours, along with 29 armored personnel carriers, 91 supply trucks, 8 main battle tanks, 38 artillery pieces, 40 drones, 1 MLRS, 2 anti-aircraft warfare systems, and 1 Bobcat skid steer. All in all, it does appear that the losses are retaining a pretty nice number. And we have been able to see that Miss Disa, the keeper of the records, has included that 1,560 Russian soldiers wounded and killed as the 6th highest day of losses ever seen so far. And not only that, 91 supply trucks being lost is the 12th highest day of losses seen so far in the war. And it does look like the losses are, of course, remaining quite high. And from what we understand, it is still not as high as the Hot Dog Man. A great misfortune indeed, but I'm sure that the Ukrainians will be able to climb the number up to where it will be high enough that it will be as high as the Hot Dog Man someday. But nevertheless, moving on from that and the casualty report, we are going to be moving on into the area of Vovchansk, where we were able to see a little bit of battle activity by the Ukrainians in this area. We were actually able to see that they were hitting some Russian units around here in the border guards. Check it out. And we see here that they are just slamming the Russians. Oh, I mean, it's absolutely amazing stuff right here. And we see them continuing to get slammed. And it is absolutely horrendous. And we can see that things are just going terribly, terribly, horrendously, as a matter of fact. My heavens. And they are just dropping bomblets on them. They are absolutely wrecking them. I would say thrashing them quite heavily. But still, we are seeing that the border guards are doing amazing work in this area. And we cannot wait to see them continue to do even more amazing work. But still, with that, we are seeing the rounding out of that clip, but we are absolutely enthralled to see that the border guards are doing great work in that area today. Moving on from that and into Vovchansk, we were also able to see what Vovchansk is looking like these days, and it isn't really looking great. Most of the buildings have been destroyed, at least in the area, and it seems as though things are not really going that well in Vovchansk. The city has pretty much been destroyed at this point, but nevertheless, they continue to fight on. With that, that's the end of the clip right there, but we are going to be moving on from that little bit of news and on out of that area and on into the area just around the direction of Lebanon, or the Crimea Forest, as we call it. We were able to see that in this area, Ukrainian T-64 actually withstood a hit from a Lancet FPV drone on the Russian side. And also, Matthew, just to bring this on air really quickly so that way I can say this without having to text it, I'm also going to try something else on my end, maybe one thing that might be able to fix it over here. And let me see if I can find it again. Here we go. I'm going to, let's see. Oh, no, we don't want to do that because it'll quit and relaunch Discord. But I can actually stop the Discord from eating up CPU, which may help a little bit, maybe. I don't know. But it will be worth a shot maybe tomorrow to see if it will. But moving on from that and down into the area of Seversk, we were also able to see a Ukrainian tank moving up to the front in Seversk today. And take a look at this. It was a pretty muddy day out there. It looks like the Rasputitsa has arrived finally.
Looks real wet, real nasty, and just sort of muddy.
It's real wet, long-lasting wet, but still, it is very muddy and very nasty ground conditions. We were also able to see the commander of the 54th showing us what a day off looks like.
Я ел бутерброд с маслом, с колбасой.
They're just chilling in here. And also, Matthew, how's that call coming through? Is it coming through fresh and exciting?
For right now, it's coming through fresh and exciting, and I hope it stays that way because the lag is getting on my nerves so bad. It's like it's interrupting my thoughts and everything, so hopefully that fixes it.
Hopefully it does. It shows that the Discord's connected fine, and I did check the task manager a little while ago, and it didn't really look like anything was eating up that much. Like, you know, to be entirely honest, like even with everything running full speed, it didn't look like it was doing that badly. But, you know, still we'll have to wait and see.
Знаешь, какой вкусный, с чаем. Пальчики оближешь.
You see they're having a nice warm tea.
Барчик.
Barchik.
Is it better now?
It's better now. Whoa, hey, get that Chad music out of here. That's copyrighted. We're gonna get blasted for that.
Whoa, was that a mansion over there on the left? Did you see that?
Bro. Was it? May have been?
Man, they're living in the mansion over there. Wow.
Man, the whole roof is gone. Like, the roof has been burned in. We see them making this nice little toin here. And Matthew, I'm just wanting to make sure you can still hear me well, right?
I can still hear you well, but the screen just like suddenly ended the stream for some reason.
On Discord?
Yes.
That is weird. Is it working again?
Yeah, it's back on now.
Man, I'm going to be honest with you, man. I think most of the problems are Discord related. Like, because it doesn't make any sense that it would be anything else, to be entirely honest. Because Discord, from what I was seeing in the task manager and everything else for that matter, isn't really eating that much, like, memory or CPU for that matter. Like, it's not fluctuating or spiking much at all. So I'll be honest.
What's it say? What's the usage on the RAM? Does it say?
Well, I closed it because I had to throw up the intro card while you were gone to go look at it so that folks wouldn't see it on air because it pops up on the main screen when I, like, open it. Even on the second screen, it'll open up on the main screen. But it was saying that it was somewhere around, like, 60% or something like that.
Interesting. We'll have to look into that because I'll try to reset my computer tomorrow and see if that fixes it. If not, we'll have to start upgrading systems and see if that fixes it.
I mean, maybe we'll have to see. But nevertheless, moving on from that and down into the Pokrovsk area, we were able to see Bradley supporting Ukrainian forces in this area. And check this out. There's the Bradley. I like how they call it a BMP. Like, you're going to insult us by calling the amazing Bradley infantry fighting vehicle a BMP? Please. But we can see them here moving forward the BMP, and it is laying down heat on those Russians. My goodness. That chain gun just does amazing stuff. And we see the Ukrainian soldiers dismounting and immediately getting to work. Like a SWAT team. Drop the gun! Drop the gun! He's got a knife! Or something like that. But we can see the Bradley now pulling off. Absolutely styling on him. Oh! Looks like he may have been hit. But we see the Ukrainian infantry soldiering on, literally, clearing out the Russian positions and moving with great speed and precision. And that's the end of that clip, but very impressive work. Moving on from that and into the area a little bit closer to Seladove, we did get to see a abandoned Ukrainian Kirpi in the area today, of course showing the heavy fighting that was going on here, but also showing the unfortunate loss of another Turkish armored car. We see him taking pictures, apparently for mementos. Maybe even Mentos. And they're on their way. He broke the rule. It said, do not stand behind the door. This man is thugging because he stood right behind the door, Matthew, in a dangerous spot.
Man, he doesn't care. He's got that dog in him.
Man, he's got that dog in him. He's got that hopefully at FPV like kind of dog in him. It's like, man, he's got that great dog in him. But also, check this out. Oh, we got to mute that. But there goes one Ukrainian helicopter. No, well, you thought it was over. Here comes the second one.
Man, they're flying low. That's why they call them choppers.
Man, I thought choppers were those things that Hell's Angels, like, rode around on.
Yeah, it could be.
But moving on from that and down into the area of Volodar, we also got to see the Ukrainians evacuating some soldiers under fire just west of Volodar. And there's the Ukrainian BTR right there. And we see one mortar round land in front of it, but that doesn't dissuade the Ukrainians, for they will conduct the evacuation. Oh, dang, that was really close, actually. But they're still going. We see the Ukrainian flag flying high from the back of this BTR as the Ukrainian soldiers now move into the area, helping to evacuate their comrades. We see the BTR moving forward about a block, and artillery is actually getting really close, but that still will not dissuade this incredible BTR. We now see them loading up the Ukrainians and getting them out of there, and the BTR now scoots away to victory. And that's the end of that clip. But an absolutely amazing clip, and we love to see it. We love to see it. Moving on from that and into the area of, well, actually into the area of Kyiv. We are now going to be covering the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky here on day 980 of the war. And so, without further ado, here is the peach. Peach!
Give the speech.
Long-lasting speech. And here we go.
Здоров'я, шановні українці і українки, завершив візит до наших друзів з Північної Європи. Був вже 4-й саміт Україна, держави Нордики, Ісландія, Данія, Норвегія, Фінляндія, Швеція. Дуже продуктивно. Домовились про нові пакети підтримки для нашої оборони, також для нашої енергетики. Багато говорили і про інвестиції в наше виробництво зброї саме в Україні, і про розвиток спільних оборонних проєктів. Є вагома історія таких відносин з Данією. Ми називаємо данська модель, яка дозволяє залучати фінанси від наших партнерів саме в українське оборонне виробництво. Зокрема, робимо артилерію, вже майже 20 Богдан на місяць. Хороші результати і по інших напрямках. Буде більше результатів. Снаряди, техніка, дрони, все необхідне. Я вдячний усім, хто нам допомагає. Продовжуємо роботу щодо ППО. Зокрема, на саміті НАТО у Вашингтоні була абсолютно чітка, конкретна домовленість щодо систем ППО для України. Також комплектації бригад. І зараз це ще не реалізовано повністю. Ми дуже розраховуємо, що наші партнери, нордики, допоможуть нам із цим в контактах з іншими партнерами. Домовленості повинні виконуватись. Тим більше в умовах такої війни. Я хочу окремо подякувати усім країнам Північної Європи за підтримку плану перемоги. Це стратегія дій, яка вже на столі. Ми готові чути пропозиції інших держав. Інші погляди, будь ласка, але наразі чітке, прораховане бачення подальших дій разом з партнерами є в нашому плані перемоги. Головне – знайти рішучість, виконати пункти, і це точно наблизить мир. Вдячний також за повне розуміння нашої логіки щодо запрошення в НАТО для України. Україна завжди пропонує тільки те, що реально допоможе натиснути заради справжнього миру. І ми не втомлюємось це пояснювати. Зокрема, нашим партнерам у Берліні, у Вашингтоні та іншим. Також вже бачимо і контури зустрічі в форматі Рамштайн, яка має відбутись найближчими тижнями. Це важливо. Дуже важливо, щоб кожен пакет підтримки був реалізований повністю. І щоб наші кроки з партнерами були дійсно спільними і максимально дієвими. Сьогодні я вже повернувся в Україну, багато зустрічей, зараз тут, у Закарпатті, багато є регіональних справ, які мають значення для всієї нашої країни. Робота з місцевими громадами, робота з місцевими підприємцями. За кілька років вдалося зробити Закарпаття однією з опор нашої стійкості, всієї вже України. І говорив сьогодні тут з керівниками громад області, з представниками бізнесу. Була зустріч разом з першою віце-прем'єркою Свириденко, з бізнесом регіону. А це бізнес, в тому числі релокований з інших наших областей. Ми бачимо, як зростає тут виробництво, які є перспективи. І водночас є питання, є проблеми. Допоможемо з рішеннями обов'язково. І зараз ще відвідую наших хлопців, воїнів, які проходять реабілітацію після поранень. Бойові наші хлопці з наших бригад, що воюють на Донеччині, в Вовчанську, на Курщині. Хочу подякувати їм від усіх наших людей, від всієї України та відзначити їх державними нагородами за таку потрібну роботу, таку службу, за їх таку потрібну хоробрість. Хоробрість, яка завжди має вирішальне значення і на полі бою, в політичних рішеннях. Дуже сподіваємось на хоробрість партнерів. Слава Україні!
Ram Slava.
Ram Slava.
And with that, that is the end of the speech, the end of the peach from President Volodymyr Zelensky here on day 980 of the war. And this is the first day where we can say that we are only 20 days away from day 1000 of the war. Isn't that crazy, Matthew? Isn't that just crazy?
It is crazy. It's 1,000 days of war. It feels like it just started yesterday, but it's already 1,000 days.
Boy, how time flies and how they grow up so fast. But nevertheless, it does seem as though 1,000 days away is just upon us almost at this point. And still, it seems as though things may be falling apart a little bit, at least, with Ukraine and the United States, or at least Ukraine and what the United States has been doing and what the dog doing. And Zelensky did lash out at the United States today over major intelligence leaks regarding the Tomahawk missiles. And is he justified? And it seems as though many people, a great many people, have agreed that yes, Zelensky is in fact justified. Some are saying that they're a little unsure on that, and some people are saying it is what it is, and some others are saying that no, Zelensky is simply not justified. Still, nevertheless, it seems as though a lot of people are believing that Zelensky's lashing out at the United States of America was justified today. And Matthew, what are people thinking about that, and what are you thinking about? And also, Matthew, considering that I was not able to throw that into our stream today, would you like to give some people who may not know about it a little bit of a synopsis on what exactly went down today with the Zelensky-American beef?
Yes, so a little quick synopsis here. Zelensky was giving some type of speech or interview today where he was asked a question about what does he think about the leaks about the Tomahawk missiles that Zelensky had requested for Ukraine, and his response was to lash out at the United States for leaking that information, and obviously that did catch the news headlines quite a bit. So about 69% said yes, Zelensky is justified at lashing out at the USA, while 11% said it is what it is, and 9% said no, Zelensky is not justified. And on this one, I would say that Zelensky is 100% justified. The leaks coming out of the United States recently have been horrific, and pretty much everything that any of our allies say to the United States is leaked out to the press almost immediately. Netanyahu said that, Ukraine said that, the UK, I believe, might have said that at one point. Someone might have said that in the UK, but several countries are saying that. So to me, this is not good whatsoever. This indicates that there is no OPSEC in the United States government right now, which is obviously a very big problem that needs to be addressed. And I would say that I'm with the 69%. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to be with the 69% as well. Nice. I would also have to agree that Zelensky's lashing out at America. Usually I'm not a big fan of Ukraine saying anything negative about the United States, but on this particular instance, I'm not really against it, and I really understand where they're coming from, because we have seen that the United States conducts leaks or OPSEC violations on the near daily at this point with everyone that they're involved in, and it's something of an issue at this point. It doesn't now I do want to say this: it does not mean that the West has fallen or that America sucks or that I hate America to say that it has an issue. That is not at all the case. I love the United States of America. I am an American, and this entire channel revolves around supporting American and Western interests. However, to support Western and American interests, one has to be able to know when to shut the hell up. And it's something to be said that the U.S. government really does not know when to shut the hell up. They put out just about everything. They say, oh, look, Israel wants to bomb Iran tomorrow. And then they throw off Israel's plans. So then they stop telling us anything because they know they can't trust us with the information right now. And then with Ukraine goes, we would like to, maybe invade Kursk or something at some point in the future. And then Thug Shaker Central puts that out, and then that is all thrown away into the wind. And then they ask for Tomahawks, and then that's thrown into the wind. And everything just keeps on being put out there on blast. And it's something that is just insanely infuriating coming from our position, considering that we support American interests and we support our causes around the world, and then to see that there's always statements being put out that is demeaning our causes around the world, it's very annoying. Sometimes that's coming directly from the office of the president, from what we understand. Other times it's coming from lower offices inside of the executive branch that usually leak that info out. That is what is just annoying. Like, for one, the office of the president should not be authorizing any leaks. If they want to be privy to information from our allies, you can't leak it. Otherwise, they're not going to give you any more information because they're going to be scared you're going to leak it. But as far as the lower offices go, sometimes people are doing that unilaterally without approval from the president at all. They just don't like something, so they go and leak it to the press, and then their name is never found or uncovered. I would say that, in my opinion, a special detachment of the FBI should be made by authorization of the president to start looking into all of the executive branches and try and find where these leaks are coming from. There are certain kinds of leaks like these that most likely would carry felony charges if the person was to be found that was conducting these leaks. This should be found and addressed immediately. It is a major national security risk that a lot of people seem to be taking upon themselves and their personal convictions that they should leak stuff to the public and to the press that otherwise could be against American interests if they were to do so. That is not a good move. We've been seeing that a good bit, not over the past 4 years, to make that quite clear. We've been seeing that for even longer than this. We've been seeing this for about the past 7 to 8 years. And it's not stopping, and it needs to end, because we're starting to lose a lot of our credibility with allies and the trustworthiness that America has, because we keep on just leaking everything out, because it gets into someone's hands, they don't like what is being done, and so then they leak it to hopefully try and thwart what's being done. That is just wildly annoying, and it's also demining American interests. And so I hope that does address that the best I can. And also, Matthew, do you have anything extra to add to that?
I would say personally, I agree with you 100%. It really does seem like there's someone in the current U.S. administration that either decides on their own volition that they don't like what's happening somewhere. Like specifically, we see that really in the Middle East. Like whenever Israel's about to do something, all of a sudden there's a massive leak of their battle plans and telling Iran exactly what they're going to do and when they're going to do it, which is horrific because there are people currently that don't really like Israel, and they're taking the opportunity to go out there and try to sabotage their attack plans by releasing their whole battle plan. So to me, that should be investigated very quickly, like you were saying. And the fact that it's not being investigated that deeply is a little bit telling in itself. And that is something that needs to be addressed by somebody. I'm not sure really who's going to be able to address that right now, but maybe in the future someone can address that, because I understand why Zelensky and Netanyahu are angry. They have a right to be angry because the largest military power in the world, which is the United States, can't be trusted with basic secrets being told over the phone, which is insane to think that. We have a $1 trillion military budget, but we can't keep a secret to save our life at this point. So I would say fix it quick, or otherwise something else needs to change.
Yeah, and also another thing, here's something that I have to say. This is a little bit more of a critique about America at large at this point. And also, Mandy, by the way, before I go into this, are you hearing me well at this point? Like, is it breaking up any?
I can hear you pretty clear right now.
Okay, good. Okay. So I want to make sure to put this out there because, of course, and I have to explain this, and I know many people are like, why do you always explain this? It's because people just never get it, no matter how many times I say it. There's not everyone that doesn't get it. It's always just some people who are like, oh, you say no politics, but you're talking about politics. Oh, Levios, oh. And I'm like, oh my God, like get it through your head. We don't talk about domestic politics on the channel, but making an overall critique or a condemnation or a praising of the U.S. government as a whole, not mentioning specific political affiliations, is entirely acceptable on the channel, especially on Matthew and my end. Some people like to try and then use that in the live chat to go, both parties suck, but mine sucks less, and then that's also unacceptable as well. But beyond that, to say this really quickly, the problem with the modern day United States is that a lot of people take it upon themselves that their beliefs as an individual outweigh the beliefs of the entire nation. And if the entire nation disagrees with them, well, the nation is wrong, they're not. And I'm very tired of that kind of a mindset because now it's starting to permeate in the U.S. government as well. A lot of what's happening with these leaks isn't actually leaks authorized by the president, to be entirely honest with y'all, because these have been happening over the past 8 years in 2 completely different administrations run by 2 completely different political parties. What is happening is that minor members inside of the executive branch in different departments are privy to certain kinds of information, and these people believe that their beliefs, their opinions are gospel. And if anything disagrees with them, even if the entire nation disagrees with them, they're all wrong, not them. And so what they do is, like right now, there are some members inside the United States executive branch in different departments that get access to information about what America or what Israel is going to be doing in the Middle East. And then they go, oh, I don't like that because I actually like the Palestinians or something. So I'm going to call up the press and I'm going to leak this information to them so that way all these plans are thrown out the window. And then they do it. And then all the plans get thrown out of the window, and then they have to be redone. And then everyone gets tired of sharing information with the United States because we have all of these minor members who believe that because they have a mouth and they have an opinion, and it's different than the one that's presiding at the moment, that they can just go and completely go against the interest of the people and do whatever they want to in support of their own interests. It's exactly the kind of thing that annoys me a lot with people right now who get into domestic politics so much, because I'll let y'all know this, like, regardless, and this will be the honest truth. I'm going to tell y'all this. It might hurt some people, but this is reality. It does not matter who is going to win in the upcoming election. I know it blows people away to hear that. And then the other thing that is going to blow people away is that whoever is going to lose, because someone is going to lose, the other side is going to largely deny that the election was even legitimate. Like, that's going to happen because it's the same kind of mindset that's happening in these junior departments in the executive branch right now. If everyone in the country votes a different way than me, and I thought it was supposed to be this way, everyone else is just wrong. I've always got to be right. And that's how it always is these days. People have to be able to accept that it is what it is. Like, if you're in the government and you do not like the Israelis and you like the Palestinians, that's tough. You can't really keep on going against the interests of the nation just because you have a different opinion. And regardless of how that goes, you can't sit there with the election and go, oh, it's fake, because the results weren't in your favor. And a lot of people and a lot of people are going to say, well, that's only one side. No. I remember the past two elections at this point, and I remember in the last one, the side that lost said that they didn't lose. And then before that, a lot of people said that the other guy who got voted in was not the president, and the election was not legitimate because the popular vote's the only thing that counts. It's not the electoral vote. It's been that every single time now for the past 8 years. It's going to be the same way here in just a little bit. I will put money on it. And it's just freaking annoying to me. And then seeing all these people feeding into it right now in this YouTube space, at least in our little, like, kind of like circle that we're in YouTube, where everyone's like, oh, like, so-and-so wants to eat babies. Like, but if you vote for these people, they're good. And I'm like, come on. I'm like, that's just stupid. Like, it's propaganda, like, at this point, because it's like, neither side is going to eat your babies. Like, they're not going to ruin the country, and they're not going to put you in camps. Like, it's not going to happen either way. Because you know what's, like, crazy about that is that, like, the other party still, regardless of who wins and loses, still controls, like, half of the government. So how in the world does that work or happen? Like, it's like, I don't know. Like, it just wouldn't. And that's the issue, like, that I'm having at this point with how things are running in this country. Not really how they're running, but how people think. And I think that kind of thinking needs to start being curbed by really the government. Like, the government needs to start coming out and saying, no, just because you have an opinion on something and you disagree maybe with the majority of people, that doesn't mean that they're all wrong. That just means that that's the way things are going because we work off of the majority opinion. Like, that's how this country works. So,
well, unfortunately, getting back to your original point about the leaks that Zelensky was very upset about, the truth of the matter is this. I'm trying not to get into politics here. That's why I'm sort of like holding back a tad here. But when Zelensky requests the Tomahawks, he calls up the U.S. president on the phone and says, Mr. President, we would like some Tomahawk missiles because we feel like we can hit a Russian target. And he gives him the pitch for why he should get the Tomahawk missiles. The guys at the advisors, the president, I'm trying to avoid saying his name, so that's why I'm stumbling. But the guy's advisors should be sitting around when he's on the phone call, so they might get to hear that, or maybe he'll be told later to the advisors what was said on the phone call. But nonetheless, there's only a handful of people that would have heard that, and they're also sworn to secrecy anyway. So if they really wanted to find out who was at the bottom of the leaks, they could find that pretty quick. That's the truth of it. But they really don't want to find it, which makes me wonder, are these leaks sponsored by the administration or not?
Yeah, that's a good question. But at the same time, though, making sure not to mention the names of people because people go crazy. Like when we mention the name of the current president or the former president, like people go crazy either way. But with the former president, though, remember that there were loads of leaks under his presidency as well. And he really didn't know about them all. To be honest, a lot of them were things that he didn't agree with at all. And they were still flowing out. And he really had no clue who those people were either, for the most part.
I honestly don't recall that very much, to be honest with you.
Well, remember when the Chinese were tipped off that we might be planning some sort of actions against them, and no one knew who that person was until after he was not president, and then it was like, oh, it was this guy. And it was like, what? So like, wait a minute, they didn't know? It's like, stuff like that. It's kind of almost the
I
same
think the
thing.
truth. I think the truth on that story was everybody knew who called the Chinese, but the catch was it sort of undermined the authority of the president, so they kind of let it fly until he was out of office. Because it's known when they called. Like, let's just put it that way. There's no phone calls that are ever made that they're not aware of. Those phone calls are monitored by that branch, and they would have known about it. So they're pretending like they didn't know about it, but they probably did.
Maybe. I would have to assume though, with what we're working off of, if anyone knew, I mean, someone would have told him. Like that's what I'm thinking, because there had to have been someone out there, man, who was like, I don't agree with that at all, just completely circumventing the actions of the president and then calling the Chinese on your own. Like I feel like someone would
That
have
was
told
basically
him.
treason.
Yeah, I mean, hell, I think a lot of things are treason. Like, when the current president wasn't notified of the balloons flying over the United States. Like, it's like, who the hell is who in the hell was the person who made that call? Like, nah, he doesn't need to know. It's like, who in the world's making these calls? Like, because it's
No,
like,
it came out that he was notified, by the way. They saw the balloon coming in over the ocean. Like they knew it was coming in, and they just didn't do anything about it.
oh, well, I didn't hear that part of the story. I had heard that he wasn't notified, and he only got told about it when it was over Wyoming. That's what I had heard.
Nope.
But
Nope, they tracked that thing all the way in. Every single time a balloon showed up, they tracked it. NORAD saw it, and they saw it go all the way in. And it was simply the public found out about it. That was the difference. Someone spotted it from the ground, and then they had to acknowledge it. And then they pretended like, oh, we just heard about it just now. It's like, yeah, right.
Well, I mean, regardless, though, there has been a lot of things that has happened recently. For some reason, now I'm forgetting all of them. Because when you were like, nope, they told him, I was like, what? And then I forgot all the other examples. But there has been a lot of moments where things have been done, things have been leaked, that is not within the wishes of the president. And the one I'm trying to make clear, because we're making sure to make this an equal critique, is that there's a lot of junior people inside of the executive branch, specifically within the executive agencies and departments, that are doing things of their own volition and wishes, whether that's in the president's grand strategy or not. Now, I'm not going to say that I'm a fan of the current president or the former president, but one thing I am going to say is that, considering that they are both the president of the United States, if they have a national imperative or some sort of a strategic objective, it is not the objective of the executive to do whatever they wish in these minor departments. It is to do what the president wishes to do. He is the head of the executive, and therefore his word is law for the large part inside the executive branch. The executive agencies and departments that are under his control are supposed to be following what he's saying, whether people like that or not. And I don't like the idea, either, whether they're trying to disguise it or not, of things being leaked that appear to be against the interests of the objectives of the office of the president. It does not look good.
Yeah, I would agree with that 100%. They need to get a grip on that. And also, to be honest with you, and also, Enforcer, I'm not sure how far we're going into the whole situation. You've talked politics a little bit here, but are we allowed to go into anything further on the foreign policy side of things?
Could you text me that really quickly so that way I could like kind of give it a review?
It's just a general statement about foreign policy, basically my dissatisfaction with it.
Yeah, as long as we don't like make it, really pointed, I'm sure it's fine.
Well, I was just going to say this basically. The foreign policy right now across the world is atrocious. Our allies have told us that. Netanyahu's told us that. He's fighting right now with the U.S. constantly. Ukraine is now telling us that. Zelensky's letting that out quite heavily. We saw that today on the video. And all of our allies, we just heard today that the Europeans are thinking about creating a spy agency, their own intelligence agency, because they need to get their own intelligence because they can't trust the United States. I mean, our allies are saying this stuff, and we're sort of ignoring it. Foreign policy right now is a bit of a disaster around the world. Like, people are running amok. You have Russia doing whatever they want. We're not allowing Ukraine to strike back deep into Russia. I mean, nothing really makes sense. The situation in Israel really doesn't make sense. We're sort of like punishing Israel, but at the same time supporting them. It makes no sense. It needs to change. Like, it really does. It's a bad foreign policy.
I would largely agree with that. I would add though, I wasn't really a big fan of the foreign policy even before now. Like, years ago, that didn't really look like a good foreign policy metric either, because it was like, in some areas we would go a little soft. Like on Iran we did nothing. Like, and I got to remind everyone about that again, like if y'all are hearing right now, And I agree with Matthew. Our stance in the Middle East is incredibly confusing and weird, and it doesn't make any sense. But then, even before that, we did nothing to Iran for those 4 years either. Like nothing. Like, like everyone sat there and talked about, oh, look at them, they're thriving, and then we didn't do anything to stop them from thriving. I'm like, what are we doing? Like, there has to be a change. There has to actually be a legitimate change outside of what we've been seeing for about the past decade, in my opinion, at this point. Because I would have to say, I think the general thing that is causing the problem is that all presidents, currently, former, and so on, are very complacent at this point with the position that America is in. America is in a great position at the moment. The Western world has been in a great position for about the past 30 years, where we've really had no natural competitors. The Western world has been it, especially after the fall of the Soviet Union. But now we're seeing the rise of the Chinese. We're also seeing the nuclearization of North Korea and possibly Iran. Well, we already have seen the nuclearization of North Korea, and now we're also possibly seeing that for Iran. And not only that, we are now seeing that a war has broken out in Eastern Europe. Things have changed greatly from the kind of like Pax Americana that we have from 1991 up until about, in my opinion, about 2021 or so. Things have changed massively, and we need to see that things are brought back under control, or we're actually able to live in this new kind of a world, but at least keep a handle on things and make sure that our entire sphere isn't trampled on overnight, because that's really the direction it's heading in. And I'm not really seeing anyone, I want to make that clear, anyone, either the current administration, the former one, or anyone else, actually doing enough, in my opinion, to actually assert the United States and its sphere in the world, and to make sure to defend it properly, where we're not having to give away parts of it wholesale because we've ended up fumbling the situation that badly. Like, that would be my opinion.
Part of it is as well, we need to outline exactly what is our stance on foreign policy. Because like Beeps and Eats said in the live chat, they said we used to have a clear stance on every aspect of foreign relations, and now it's looking like jello in an earthquake. And it's true. Like, the U.S. right now really doesn't know what it's really standing for. Like, for example, the biggest example of this is in Israel. Like I said a moment ago, we're punishing Israel. We're withholding some weapon shipments. But at the same time, we're telling Israel, we're going to protect you 100% if the evil Iran attacks you. But then at the same time, we say Israel is evil because they're attacking the proxy forces, which are also Iranian, which are around the same area where Israel is. It's like, how can we not like take a certain stance on that? Either we support Israel 100% or we don't. Which one is it? And also, since when did we start withholding weapon shipments from allies? Because one group of people saying we don't like what Israel's doing. And that's really prioritizing politics and votes over what actually needs to be done in foreign policy. I get that they have to do a bit of a balancing act. They're worried about being reelected. That's always an issue with the president. But the catch is as well, ultimately, the president has to decide, I'm going to have to do what's right. And if I don't get reelected, I'm going to have to take that risk because I have to do what's right here and not put the votes above everything else. But right now, based on who says something one day, if one group's louder than the other, we just bend foreign policy depending on who needs to get what votes from whoever. It makes no sense. The Middle East is a really big quagmire right now, and also we're seeing in Ukraine, there's a whole group of people that's for Ukraine, and there's a big group of people that's against Ukraine. When one group becomes louder than the other, all of a sudden the current administration backs off, or they say we're not going to give Ukraine the permission to strike deep into Russia, which makes no sense either, even though there's currently a guy out there saying right now, oh, strike back, Jack, you need to strike back. Well, how can they strike back if you told them that they can't? That makes no sense either. There just needs to be some common sense in the equation, and we're missing that right now.
And also, I'm seeing some people say, let's see here, a lot of people are saying different things at the moment in the live chat about the situation. And also, Aussie Dave, we'll move on when we want to. If I see that again, that's going to be a ban. Oh, and they got banned or timed out or something. We'll move on our own time. That's not your time. If you don't like it, you can go to another channel. But beyond that, what I will say is that there needs to be a clear messaging, at least on the foreign policy of the civil administration, because we are seeing that the Department of Defense has clear outlines. Like, whenever you look at a Department of Defense release, of any kind of official publication to the public, it always has very clear kinds of goals and objectives. Like, we're going to contain the Chinese, or we're going to work against Iran to make sure to ensure that the United States sphere of influence exists. And then, in Eastern Europe, we're going to make sure to strengthen that bulwark to make sure that it's ready to withstand any kind of Russian aggression in the future. The Department of Defense has very clear outlined objectives, and whenever you read the Department of Defense's publications, it looks as though American foreign policy is very clear, and it really is exactly what I'm saying it should be. But then when you look at the actual office of the president and what they say and then what they do, it's almost in sometimes complete contradiction to what the Department of Defense is laying out in its publications. And the Department of Defense has some very reasonable publications and statements. It largely is just dealing with and containing our adversaries and really kind of putting them in a bubble where they are, the Iranians, the Chinese, the North Koreans, and the Russians all together. But then when you sit there and see the administration, whichever one's in charge, going about its thing, it's always going, oh, hey, let's, maybe back off and give the Russians some breathing room to do what they want to do. And whoa, hey, maybe we don't want to contain the Chinese. Maybe we just want to create a net, but poke big enough holes in it that they can go wherever they want at the end of the day. And maybe we don't want to really do anything to Iran. Maybe if they have a nuclear weapon, it'll be fine. Or something along those lines. It's like, what are people thinking? Like, what has anyone been thinking? And also someone said, weak administration. It's not this one. It's the last one, too. Like, who has done anything to Iran ever? Like, no one. Like, no one did. Like, let's see. Let's go back before that. We wanted some hostages released, so we gave them hundreds of millions of dollars. And then the next administration came in, and then they did nothing to Iran, like at all, like either in support of them or in condemnation of them. Like they put like some almost ceremonious sanctions on them, and that was it. And then the current administration has done nothing to them either. Where the hell is the dealing with Iran? There's not one. Like we haven't seen one. I don't like. That's why I can't get into like the partisan politics side of things and picking a side, because you just look at it and take a step back. It's like no one's done anything to deal with Iran. So like why in the world is there a solid argument to say if you vote for one side or the other, someone's going to deal with Iran? They're not. They need to change that though. Like someone needs to actually come forward and say, what are they going to do to deal with Iran's nuclear weapons program? What are they going to do to deal with the Islamic Republic at all? Like not just the nuclear program as a whole, the destabilizing like the force they are in the region. What are we going to do about this beyond just letting it pass another 4 years and then revisiting this again? What are we going to do with the Russians? Because they're clearly getting incredibly antsy at this point, and they're getting hostile. That's been clear for 3 years now. So it's like, what are we going to do to deal with this situation? And we've kind of put a little bit of a band-aid on it, but it's on a massive leak. What are we going to do with that to deal with that overall? And no one I've seen so far has come up with a good solution to that. And then what are we going to do with the Chinese? Like the Department of Defense is laying out a containment protocol for the large part on how to keep them in the area they are and not to allow them to create a massive sphere of influence. But then at the same time, we're so scared to really confront the Chinese on that and to actually contain them. And it doesn't mean we have to go to war with them. That just means that we have to be assertive enough to actually move forward the containment protocol that we could actually stop them in their tracks. But we're too scared to do that multiple times, time and time again, that they continuously flood out of the East China Sea and the South China Sea and just start sailing into the Indian Ocean. And now we're seeing that there's slowly yet surely, it's going to take a little bit longer than the Chinese expected, but they're still going to create this sphere of influence that they're trying to make. And nothing is being fixed. Like from what I can tell, for a decade at this point, so that's encompassing all sides in America, nothing has really changed in my opinion, and someone needs to step forward and actually start laying out outlines on how to contain our adversaries or completely thwart what they're doing. That's my opinion on this.
I'll say this, Enforcer. I'm not advocating for anybody in specific, because to be honest with you, there's really nobody out there in specific that like really stands out to me. And also, we don't get into politics here. We're not endorsing anybody. We don't do that. But at the same time, though, I will disagree with you a little bit. In the last 3.5 years, the proxy forces have really, really ramped up around Israel more than ever. And that's part of the reason why we're suddenly seeing Israel have to take these measures that they're currently taking, is because those proxies are being armed to the teeth by Iran because they see some weakness here, and they're deciding to go in hard on Israel all at the same time. Now, I will say that prior to that, this is not an endorsement, keep this in mind, but Soleimani was taken out by the prior administration. So that was a very big assassination that took place that has never taken place in the last 3.5 years. So that was some sort of action right there. And obviously, Soleimani was a massive target. And there was other options to take. The Soleimani could have been taken out, or the CIA was suggesting that maybe they ought to go in there and maybe just track him and see his whereabouts. But the option was taken to actually eliminate him, which was a very, very big and bold step. And that could have triggered some consequences, but it didn't, though. Iran largely stayed status quo for the most part until the last 3.5 years. So, I don't know. To me, I see a bit of a difference. I'm seeing a lot of appeasement here recently. And once again, this is not attributed to any single candidate. If anybody did it, the person that's in charge now, the person that's in charge later, whoever it is, if they would simply take the strong approach and create deterrence, that's all the USA really needs to ensure that we still have like the world policing authority that we've always had, and we're not losing our standing in the world sphere. Because right now it seems like we're slipping.
And I don't know, man. Like, like that's a point. Like the Soleimani was killed, but did that really deal with Iran? Because, from what we know, they're still developing a nuclear weapon, and then their proxy forces still ended up conducting an attack on Israel. So did killing Soleimani actually do anything rather than just replace him with someone else? Like that's kind of an argument that I'd make, because it's like, yeah, sure, they killed him and that was great, but it didn't change anything. It didn't stop it. It didn't solve it. It was an event that happened, and that was that, really.
There's always going to be a replacement. Like there's no doubt about that. Whenever there's a bad force, they're always going to have people just raring to take their place. Whenever that top leader gets killed, that's just a given. But the key is, how did Iran respond to that? They did not start launching ballistic missiles like crazy at Israel. That did not happen. They largely stayed status quo. Even though we took out the top IRGC commander, they stayed status quo. Now imagine if that happened right now. If we just took out Soleimani yesterday, Iran would be launching ballistic missiles like crazy, trying to destroy Israel right now. And I don't think that would have happened before.
Maybe not. That's a bit of a hypothetical I don't think I can get into, because that sounds like it might be getting a little bit more on the domestical political side and picking a side there. But I would be honest, I'm going to kind of stick with my guns. I'm not really seeing a lot that has changed. And on top of that, at that point, there wasn't anything that the proxies could do yet. Like, we have to remember that things don't work instantaneously. It's not like, some magic guy is, sitting in an office somewhere, and then Iran's like, okay, we can't go. And then once he leaves, they're like, okay, go. Like, at that point, the Iranians were still rearming Hamas, at least specifically, from the last time they tried it, I think back in 2007 or 2008, and they got obliterated then, and they were still rearming them at that point. So there was no thing of like, we're ready to go, we're just waiting for some guy to leave. Like, there wasn't any of that. They were rearming Hamas, and the only reason that Israel is currently in southern Lebanon dealing with Hezbollah is because Hamas attacked the Israelis in 2023 last year, which is what led to this entire thing to begin again in large form in the Middle East. And also with Ukraine, like, the other thing is that the dominoes weren't falling that while ago to see what would have happened then. Like, Ukraine wasn't really pushing for NATO membership like it did around 2021. And that was what actually caused the war. It wasn't that, some magic guy, left the office and then the war started. What happened is that nothing was really happening with Ukraine, and it was largely status quo for a while. Now, the United States was providing weapons and equipment to the Ukrainians in smaller amounts before the change of leadership, I guess you can call it that. It was happening, and we were supporting Ukraine materially, but it wasn't anything where Ukraine was like, we want to join NATO. As soon as Ukraine actually put forward a clear ambition in 2021 to join NATO, that's when the Russians started building up along their borders, and then that's when we saw the war was going to begin at that point, because Ukraine was not relenting off of wanting to join NATO, and Russia considers that to be a strategic downfall if Ukraine was to join. So we don't have a hypothetical to work with where we could go, some guy, in another leadership, in another administration could have fixed the situation, because it didn't happen. Like the dominoes didn't fall at that time to see what would have happened. Like, who knows what would have happened? We could have seen that, anything could have happened. The war could have been completely averted, or parts of Ukraine were just given away wholesale, almost like the Sudetenland, for appeasement, and then that was called strength because we got a good deal. We don't really know what would have happened. The war may have happened anyways. Like, there's a load of hypotheticals that could have happened there, and there's a lot of plausibility behind each and every one of them where we could go, anything could have happened. And then with the Korean Peninsula, things were like, I'll be honest here, things were looking better in the Korean Peninsula a while ago before the change in leadership, but that generally was because, in my opinion, we were moving down a path of appeasement with them. We were lessening relations, we lifted a few sanctions off of them, and we were providing them some aid. like some, like humanitarian aid, if you want to call it that. And that was why the situation looked a lot more peaceful in the Korean Peninsula, is because we were largely conducting a policy of appeasement on the North Koreans and hoping that that would stop them from, lashing out and being violent. And then once the appeasement kind of started slowing down or stopping, they immediately went back to their violent ways. And so that wasn't really, in my opinion, a fix. And then the current, like, just to make it clear, the current leadership hasn't had a fix to that either. They've just been letting the North Koreans go crazy and violent. And I don't really honestly think there is a fix to what's going on in the Korean Peninsula. Like, there are nuclear arms, so there's really no way to deal with that one. But still, it's just really like an option of, are we going to appease them and give them what they want so that way they shut up for a little bit, or are we not, and then they're going to go violent all the time, which is what they're doing right now. And I honestly think it's better for them to go violent, because I would rather not give them anything, because they're an enemy of the United States. I wouldn't appease them in any way, shape, or form for that reason. And then with Taiwan, like, both sides, to be entirely honest, don't really have a good stance on Taiwan, in my opinion. Everyone's like, well, I mean, we might back them up a little, and no one really lets a clear statement out on that, so I'll be honest, I just don't really see enough on either side to say, like one side's doing better or the other. To me, like, one, we weren't able to see enough examples in the past where we could say one side would do definitively better than the other for us to make a clear statement, because it could have gone any way if the chips started to fall back then compared to now. That's what I would have to say, because like, to be entirely honest, I'm largely not incredibly enthused about either option that I'm seeing right now. Like, in what's going on in America, all of y'all know what it is. And I just don't really think there's going to be any massive changes on the international level to anything that's going on. It'll be packaged differently, but the end result will be the same. That's what I'm largely thinking. That's why I have an issue with it. And I'm not just saying that to, because some people will say, oh, you're like the enlightened centrist, aren't you, that thinks everyone sucks? No, like, someone has to, like, whoever gets elected, I don't care who gets elected, I just want them to stop the appeasement, and I want them to get to enforcing the American sphere that has been created. That's all I want. I don't care who that is. I have no care in the world, because we don't get into domestic politics on the channel. I just want the position to change. Like, as far as the appeasement is going, that needs to end. But Matthew, do you have anything else to add before we get into them questions?
I'll just say this, that I think the key here is, like I've said for months, the key is to create deterrence. But once you lose the deterrence aspect, and I would say at this point we've definitely lost it with the United States foreign policy, then you're going to have everybody run amok simultaneously. And what's happening right now is proof of that. I'm not saying anybody in the past has ever had it perfect, because it's never been perfect. Like the Enforcer said, the Korean Peninsula was going toward appeasement, and that was honestly not a good thing in my opinion. That was the strategy 3.5 years ago, or at least 4 years ago. That was the strategy. It really wasn't getting anywhere, and it wasn't really working. But that doesn't mean to discount the entire, like, foreign policy of the past. That doesn't mean to discount that. If we had deterrence in the Middle East right now, for example, if we had attacked Iran with Israel in the past, when Iran decided to attack our ally, which is Israel, if we had been involved in the offensive attack, I guarantee you that Iran would never be thinking about attacking Israel again right now. But the United States decided to step back and take only a defensive role, which told Iran, we basically have a free pass to do whatever we want, and the U.S. is going to sit back and sit by and to simply basically deal with the fallout of our bad mistake by attacking Israel by shooting down our incoming missiles. No consequences on Iran whatsoever, and that just gave them a green light to keep doing it even more. So, to me, I would say that if we can go back to having deterrence, where these countries know that if they screw with an ally or they screw with us, the Americans are going to come in there, and we're going to use our missiles and our $1 trillion military budget, send the B-2s out, and we're going to have a very, very big and drastic response to any aggression toward our allies. I guarantee you that the tensions around the world will suddenly start going down immediately.
Well, I can tell you this. I would agree with that on the Middle East for sure. But if I was to quickly tell y'all, like, let's just say, for a hypothetical here, I'm running for president of the United States for this election that's coming up here in just, I think it's like, what is it, like 9 days or something like that, Matthew? It's like November 6th or something.
Something like that, yeah.
So let's say I'm running in this election, and what are my opinions on foreign policy at this moment in different areas of the world, and what should we do? I'm not going to cover all of them. I'm just going to cover the big ones because there are some smaller ones that we could talk about, like what's going on with Venezuela as well as Cuba. And Cuba's kind of a really, really small one. But we could talk about those if we wanted to. We're going to skip those just because I'm going to lay out exactly what I would do in the given situation. It's not going to be probably in line at all with what you're hearing from either side. And also, it's November 5th, apparently. Y'all can tell how little I'm trying to pay attention to the whole political side of things in America at this point because it is the 5th, not the 6th. But to tell you what I would do with Ukraine, I would continue to supply them with the large amount of arms and equipment that we are, but I would also start to ramp up American pressure onto the Russian Federation to try and get them moving towards a negotiating table with Ukraine. I don't think it's going to happen anymore unless if we get involved and start to put some lower level threats out there. I don't think they're going to be getting to the negotiating table anytime soon. So I think that that's what we need to be doing in that area. I think as far as the support's going, it's great. It needs to be ramped up, though, because we are hearing that Zelensky saying that the support in the $60 billion bill that was passed recently is trickling in, which is not the way it's supposed to be. We're supposed to be keeping it up at a pretty decent stream, so it needs to be moving a lot quicker. And we also need to start adding American military support, at least in the form of a threat, into the background, so that way we can start pushing the Russians into some sort of a negotiation with the Ukrainians to see what would happen in that if they actually had some real physical pressure to start ending the conflict. What will the Russians actually be willing to give up at this point? And if it doesn't look good, we'll just continue to support the Ukrainians. We'll probably start to extend a lot of their abilities, like allowing them to conduct deep strikes into the Russian Federation with Western weaponry, and continue to ramp up the pressure. And then we'll come back to the negotiating table, see what they're willing to give up at that point. And if it isn't really what we want, we'll keep it going for a little while longer. That's how the Eastern European area should be dealt with at this point. And not only that, we should start to forward deploy U.S. forces from outside of Germany and start to move them into Poland and the Baltics in very large numbers, not the smaller numbers that's currently present, but very large numbers, and not only that, in Finland as well, so that way we can clearly start to put a larger amount of military pressure and defensive power in that area if the Russians ever decide to just snap and try and go into a full-scale European conflict. That's a highly unlikely scenario, but still it would give the entire Western world a good peace of mind knowing that the bulwark, the vanguard of American forces are really right there on the point of contact that would begin if a war kicked off. The other thing that I would do in the Middle East is that, one, I would have to start ramping down some pressure on the Turks. I don't know what they're doing at this point. I know what they're doing, but at least as far as Western interests are concerned, I have no clue what they're doing. The Turks are almost rogue at this point, and they need to have it very clearly put to them that if they do not start to get in line with NATO interests, they're about to be out of everything. And I mean literally everything. They will be pretty much destitute at that point on the street begging for money as far as a country is concerned. So they're going to have to either get in line or get out of line, one or the other. And if they get out of line, it's going to be a very kind of cold embrace that they're going to be getting from us. And the Russians and the Iranians don't have a lot to give them. As far as the Iranians are concerned, I would say that given that we're dealing with the situation we have right now, I can't go back in the past and change what's happened so far. I would say that the stance needs to change immediately to a very aggressive one against Iran. The problem is going to be that the Russians might get involved, and if they do get involved, we're going to have an armed standoff with them and have them back off. That's how it's going to have to be. But as far as Iran is concerned, we need to get involved. And the next time that Iran strikes Israel, which will be happening soon, the United States needs to send a carrier task force into the area, hopefully our most advanced one, maybe with some F-35 wings on board an aircraft carrier, hopefully one of the fleets that is equipped with that. And we need to immediately start conducting decisive strikes against Iran's nuclear research facilities at a bare minimum, and then work from there. If they decide to keep running their mouth and shooting off shots in the Middle East, we'll start wiping out government officials in the Iranian government, and then we'll see how happy they are to keep running their mouth from there. If they keep on running their mouth somehow through all of that, we'll go in and overthrow their government, and then we'll let the Iranians figure out what kind of self-determining government they want from that point forward. But it will be the one they want. We're not going to try and impose one on them. They'll figure it out, but we're going to go in and overthrow the Islamic Republic if they keep it going after we go through all of those steps. That would ensure a massive load of stability in the region that we're just not seeing right now, because the only destabilizing factor in this entire area is Iran. That's it. Like, I know a lot of people are going to be like, well, what about the Syrian civil war? What about the Iraqis and the Kurds? What about the Turks and the Kurds? What about the Syrians and the Kurds? Or what about everyone else? That all would largely subside if the Iranians were dealt with. If they were dealt with, this entire area would be pretty peaceful and relatively prosperous, to be entirely honest. So if we can deal with the Iranians, this area will be in the bag, no doubt about it. With the Chinese, we can't engage them in a direct confrontation. They have nuclear weapons, and not only that, that wouldn't really be good economically for the world, to be entirely honest, at least for now. So what we need to do is we need to move forward with the Department of Defense's containment policy, which is pretty much closing them off in the South China Sea and the East China Sea, and leave it at that. Like, we don't have to do anything extremely violent to the Chinese. We just have to close them in and then keep them in this weird diplomatic, like black hole we have them in with the Taiwanese. And eventually, hopefully, through some sort of internal pressures in China, their government will change and they won't really be that against Taiwan being independent, so that way Taiwan can just declare independence. And then from that point forward, China loses all of their claims on Taiwan. That's how that would work. Beyond that, though, we do need to make sure to support them heavily militarily. We also need to make sure to start getting the Chinese to back off of the war games, the joint sword war games that they're conducting annually, that where they surround the island of Taiwan with naval and air forces. They need to back off of that. We're not going to have that anymore. We, of course, technically as the United States, we don't actually recognize Taiwan as an independent country, but we do respect the sovereignty of the Taiwanese government on the island. So we need to make sure that we enforce that and make sure to let the Chinese know the joint sword war games will no longer be happening. If they want to conduct war games inside of their own waters in the Taiwan Strait, sure, but they're not going to be conducting the joint sword war games any longer. And as far as Korea is concerned, there's no way to deal with that well. Let's just be honest. There's nothing that we can do to North Korea because they will start nuking people. So all we can do is just not give them any aid and any support and just let them go ham. And however that goes, it will go. They're not going to do anything crazy because they know that it will get curb stomped in the end. So they'll just go ham and that'll be that. And we'll just have to deal with that in the background as background noise. But that was how I would deal with every single major situation around the world. Also, hello, said Houthis. I'll throw that in as a side note. They will collapse without Iranian support, but if we want to deal with them aggressively just to send a message, we can send an expeditionary force, most likely a Marines, as long as the Navy, to deal with the Houthis and crush them in support of the Yemeni government and end the Yemeni civil war once and for all, and open up the southern Red Sea to the normal kind of trade activities that they see as a historical standard. That is a very quick and easy one to deal with. I mean, the Houthis don't have any real support on the ground. The only reason they exist is because of continuous IRGC replenishments of arms and equipment and money that keeps them alive. If Iran was to fall, or if Iranian support was to completely collapse in this region, the Houthis would disappear along with every other destabilizing force. But if we want to deal with them aggressively, we could slam them. Like, we could completely slam them from on the ground in Yemen and also through amphibious landings near Al-Hodeida, and that would pretty much be it for them. But with that, I hope that does address all of that fairly well, considering that that was a good side one to throw in. It's kind of a part of the larger Iranian problem, but we could deal with that as almost a semi-separate issue. But if I was the president of the United States, that's how I would deal with everything that we're seeing right now in the world as it exists at the moment. So if you like that kind of thinking, the situation is not going to exist in 2040 when I run for president. But if you like the way I think and the kind of approach I take to things, vote for me for president in 2040. You'll pretty much get the same thing guaranteed. But with that, Matthew, I understand that we have loads of questions that we have not gotten to at this moment because we've been having a blast talking about this. And so what do we got, Matthew?
All right, so jumping into our first question here, this one's going to go to Old Warrior, who's a channel legend, of course, and throws in a $100 donation.
Hey!
And huge shout out to Old Warrior for that support once again. And he said this is for George to match half.
And thank you so much for the massive support, Old Warrior, and matching George to match half. That's interesting, I have to say, and I do thank you so much for the support, Old Warrior, and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it was not for folks like you, we would not be able to make this channel possible, and we wouldn't be able to keep this thing running. And I got to thank you massively so much once again for the support, because if it was not for folks like you, we wouldn't have been able to be around for a while, Old Warrior. You've been around for years at this point, and you're actually, I think, one of the first, next to Super Bonker 9000, NAFO dual citizens of this channel that we've had. They're members of the LSA and NAFO at the same time, but I still thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because it's amazing to know that you're still here with us and enjoying this channel greatly. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one here is going to go to Hokey Redneck, who's a longtime channel legend, as everybody knows on the channel by now. He threw in a $100 donation, and thank you very much, Hokey, as well for that support. He said, if Iran and Israel started trading nukes, and if Iran has one, what would happen next?
That's a good question. That honestly, like as far as those questions go, Hokey Redneck, they're amazingly good, but they're also amazingly good because they're historically unprecedented questions. We've never seen a nuclear exchange in between two countries, so we really don't know how anyone would react. We know that at least the United States would probably react pretty aggressively against Iran. We may even just go through and nuke them and give them a twice over after Israel nukes them, just to make sure that we got them, or we would go through and start precisely killing Iranian government officials with drone strikes as the United States, one or the other. But that is a good question, though, because I really would not know, because there is no historical precedent, how that would end up. I guess a large part of it would we would be getting involved in the rebuilding of Israel, and also trying to help out anyone who remains alive in Israel, which would probably be about a half of the population that currently exists there. But it would be a pretty bad situation at the moment. We would also probably have to send in almost immediately U.S. armed forces into Israel. We would assume that the Israeli government had been completely neutralized in the attack, along with a large part of their defensive forces. So it would pretty much be up to the United States to maintain the stability of the state of Israel until a new government could be founded, and to also stop the proxy forces, if they survived as well, like Hamas and Hezbollah, from pretty much overrunning the country and conducting some sort of a large-scale genocide. So that would kind of be how it would go, at least in my opinion. But that is a very good question, and hopefully we'll never be able to find out the real life answer to that question with how it would actually turn out. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and I thank you so much once again for the massive support and helping this channel to keep on running, Hokey Redneck, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we would not be able to make this thing possible. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next super chat here goes to none other than Dustin Mayo, who throws in his second super chat of the night. And it's another massive $100 donation.
Dang.
And thank you very much, Dustin, once again for the second support. He said, the Russian Duma wants Alaska back, and Alaska should buy Russia. I'm just saying.
Yeah, they should. They should absolutely beat the hell out of the Russians. Like, that would be my opinion, because that is stupid. Like, we bought that from them legally. That's that kind of stupid stuff right there that you also hear from the pro, like just to say this, the pro-Palestinian side at large. They're like, oh, the Israelis stole the land. It's like, bought it legally. It's like, there's a big difference. They bought all the area around Tel Aviv illegally, and then they were given the other part of Israel, you know, the part we see mostly today, legally by the British and by the United Nations. Like, the United Nations partitioned Israel quite fairly. If you look at the original borders, it was truly a 50-50 split. The Palestinians were not a fan of that and completely refused, saying that they wanted all of it. And so then that's when the Israeli War of Independence, as it's called, or the Arab-Israeli War, as it's also called, began. And then after the end of that war, they ended up losing a decent amount of the land, specifically the land up here around the area of Nazareth. They lost all of this after the Arab-Israeli War was over, and the Palestinians originally were supposed to have it. But you can't sit there and say, I'm not happy with a half, I want all of it, risk it all, and then lose half of it, and then complain that you lost. Like, they started the war against the Israelis, they lost it, and then they lost territory. That's how it happens sometimes. They got to read it and weep. That's, like, the honest truth about it. And that's the same thing that the Russians are doing now. It's like, we got Alaska legally, fair and square. Like, we would have gotten it legally if we had beaten them in a war and they had ceded in a treaty. That would have been legally as well. We got that fair and square from the Russians. We bought it from them, and they were stupid enough to sell it at discount prices. And if they wanted to sell it at discount prices and, you know, then complain about it later because they found out Alaska is naturally rich in resources, that's on them. Like, they got to read it and weep. They sold it to us back in the 1860s. It's like, you can't complain about it now. And so with that, I thank you so much for the support, Dustin and Mayo. I hope that does address that incredibly well, at least the best I can. And thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it was not for folks like you, we would not be able to make this thing possible. And so thank you so much once again, and we are on to the next one.
And our next one here goes to Just Chillin'. He throws in a $50 donation, and huge shout out to Just Chillin' as well for the support. And they said, hello Enforcer and Enforcer Matt, and hello Just Chillin'. They said, I just want to say done. That I appreciate done the hard work done. That you two do done. To bring us done. Accurate news every night done. And stuff done. Ukraine done.
And I thank you so much for the support, Don, and enjoying all of the work that we do, Don. We put a lot of work into this channel, Don. Just chilling, Don, to make this thing possible, Don. And if it wasn't a Don, for people like you, Don, who, Don, supported this channel, Don, and helped us to, Don, keep this thing running, Don, we would not, Don, be able to make this thing
Don, the
possible.
casserole's ready in the oven, Don.
Does it have ham and cheddar, Don?
No, Don, that's not halal.
Oh.
Just beyond that. Thank you so much for
Wait a minute,
support.
halal? Wait a minute, is it halal? Is that the word? Is it halal?
Yeah.
Okay, it's not halal.
Don, is it halal, Don? Yes, it is a Don. We shall dine, Don. Inshallah, Don.
Something like that.
It's not kosher.
No, oh no, dude! If you told them it's kosher, dude, they'd look at you like that Herman Goebbels picture. You know the one I'm talking about, where he's like doing the side,
the side eye, like the evil eye.
Yeah, he would be looking at you like that if you told him it was kosher. Oh my lord! But beyond that, I do thank you so much for the support, Just Chillin', and throwing in some kind words and giving us a funny super chat as well, because we absolutely cannot stand the Dawn thing. Like, we make fun of it for that reason, but it is such an annoying thing that guy does. But still, thank you so much once again for support. And also, Chug said, what the hell just happened? I'll tell you, there's this guy down there in Chechnya called Ramzan Kadyrov, and let me see if I can go find him, a picture of him, so that way I can show you, because maybe you're new to the channel, you've never seen him before, but this guy right here. We also have nicknamed him the Ham and Cheddar Man here on this channel because he looks like he would reek of ham and cheddar, although technically, according to his faith, he can't eat ham. But nevertheless, this guy is annoying as hell, because if you ever hear him talk, Chug, he'll sit there and every other word, he'll be like, Российский Федерации, Don, это красный Don, блащет Don. And he does like this Don thing all the time. And apparently in Russian, it's something like basically or something like that. So the way he actually talks, as the leader of this entire republic, he's like, basically, the Russians basically, you know, they like attack someone basically, and, you know, basically, it's like that. Like, if you were to do that in English, that's what that is. But in Russian, it comes out as Don. And he does it endlessly. It's like every 3 words. And it's the most annoying thing.
It's kind of like, we're going to go to Ukraine, you hear me? We're going to go to Ukraine, teach them a lesson, you hear me? Then we're going to go over there with the banana, we're going to knock out the banana, you hear me? It's like kind of like that. It's like the same kind of like speech pattern.
I tell you, Don, it pisses me off, Don. Like, oh my god. Or better yet, man, it's almost like, aw, man, I've got a criminal record. Aw, man, I'm simping on these bitches. Aw, man.
Jeremy.
Man, you just overlooked that when you're like, but beyond that, I thank you so much for the support, Just Chillin', and helping this channel to keep on running, and I hope you enjoyed that little segment as well, and thank you for supporting the channel and helping it to be possible. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Yerm. It goes to Charles Hazlitt, who throws in a $50 donation. Hey! Yerm. Thank you very much, Charles Hazlitt, for that support. And he says, Yerm. He says, thank you for all the work you do. And take one from the chat, Yerm.
And you heard me. And I got to thank you so much for your support, Charles Hazlitt. You heard me. And I got to thank you so much for supporting the channel and throwing in some kind words as well tonight. And I got to say, tonight was a crazy night. I actually did not expect this, but we got up to a peak viewership of 16.5 thousand people here, which is wild. Like, we didn't expect that going into tonight, but a load of people came here tonight. We got to thank all of y'all for watching so far. 161,000 people have watched the stream at this point, and we thank all of y'all for being here. It's crazy to see that many people showing up for a news night, but we're always happy to have y'all. And also, thank you so much, Charles Hazlitt, because you've been here forever, and I thank you for being here with us tonight and listening to this news and enjoying it, because if it was not for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing a reality. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that has addressed that incredibly well, and we will make sure to grab that live chat. So what do we got, Matthew?
All right. And also, by the way, if the lag keeps going, I'll probably make Yerm probably part of my vocabulary, because I'll need to know if I'm being heard or not on Discord. But anyways, Yerm, this one goes to Zach Garber, who says, do you believe that there is Russian scientists in North Korea?
Yes, at this point, I would have to believe so, because the rocket, the rocketry results from today, from that ICBM test, is certainly showing that they're getting a large amount of refinements and improvements from Russian rocket scientists who probably are in North Korea at this point. So, to answer that question, I believe entirely so. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, and I thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running, Charles Hazlitt, and also getting us that live chat as well, that sweet, sweet live chat. But before we move on, I did see someone in the chat, someone named Dorkwing. I did not make that name up. Said, "Is the Enforcer really running for president? What party?" That is a great question, Dorkwing. That's actually a really good one. Yes, I am going to be running for president. That is the plan, at least for now, in 2040, because I'm currently not old enough to run for president. If you're new to the channel, you probably think I'm in my 30s or in my 40s, so I would be able to run. But alas, I am but a mere 22 years old. So I have a little bit of a ways to go to wait before I can even run for president. But as far as it goes, yes. What party would I be running in? That's a tough one to answer, Dorkwing. That's a very, very tough one, because the thing is that I don't really like the kind of, let me think, how do I say this? The kind of, how in the world will you even say this in a word, Matthew?
What are you trying to say?
You know, how the parties like ebb and flow, the kind of rhetoric, you know, like I'm trying to figure out a word to cover all of that.
Rhetoric, policy.
You know what? I'll just throw.
Really sure what you're looking for.
I'll throw it out there. In the best way I can. It's going to take a lot more wordage, but I don't really like the way that the parties have like specific rhetoric lines that you have to go with, and I also don't like how
the talking points.
Yeah, the talking points. I don't really like a lot of the talking points. I feel like a lot of them are honestly almost nonsensical, and they don't really make a lot of sense, at least in the modern sphere. Like, they make a lot of sense to the people who get really involved in it, but it doesn't make a lot of sense to anyone who would actually look at administration side of things. It makes no sense, and I don't really like that, because like to get into politics and to pick a party right now, I have to talk on topics that I wouldn't really find worth talking about that much, like, to be entirely honest. Like, there are very clear-cut things in my mind where it's like, this is just the obvious way to do it, and then none of the parties really do that my way. And a lot of people are like, so you're an independent? No, no, not really, because then the independents always like pick these weird candidates, and they like make an embarrassment of themselves. Like, what the hell's Aleppo? It's like, how the hell do you not know what Aleppo is? You're running in 2016. Like, it's like,
those aren't independents, by the way. That's a third party.
Well, yeah, I'm not, like, but that's not really a group I'm really wanting to get like affiliated with either. That's the tough thing about it. I don't really know who I'd want to get affiliated with, because if you get up there and you run in one of these parties, you've got to address topics that just make no sense to me. Like a load of them. Like, just to be entirely honest with y'all, I don't really think it's the role of the federal government to get involved in legislating moral decisions. That is more so something to decide on a state-by-state basis. The federal government is supposed to be just managing the entire federal system, really the entirety of the nation as well, and making sure that economically it's successful and prosperous, and that it's well defended. And that's really the only thing that, in my opinion, the federal government is having as a number one prerogative to achieve. And the morality issues that really permeate the modern sphere as far as everyone is concerned, I just don't really think that's a thing for the federal government to even discuss. Like, each state could come up with their own answer to that, and, you know, who's to say it's right or wrong? And who especially is the federal government to say that something is right or wrong across the board for the large part? That would be my opinion, and that's why I find it really hard to say I could pick a party, because both of them get you involved in talking about moralistic decision making on a federal level, which I just don't really think is ever really the responsibility of the federal government. Many things are the responsibility of the federal government. I just don't think that the decisions of morality are necessarily within its wheelhouse. I believe that's more so reserved in the 10th Amendment and the enumerated powers largely to the states, and they should be the ones to make decisions on those specific matters, while the federal government makes decisions on defense and the economy at large. That would be my general opinion. That's why it's really hard for me to pick a party, because you can't really do that in the modern sphere. But that's my take.
Well, here's my question for you, Enforcer. This is a deep one. I'm not sure if you'll have an answer for it or not. But you have to have a lot of money. You have to raise a lot of money to run for president. That's just a given. You have to. Like, you can't just say, I'm not going to raise money. You have to raise money. So you can either get money through grassroots means, which is typically very difficult to get a lot of money through grassroots means, because that means getting individual donations from regular people. And obviously, they're usually small donations. So it's kind of like you have to have a large number of those. And even with a large number, it's really not enough in today's like crazy spending for political parties and things like that, and also campaigns. So you have to get the PAC money. or the corporate sponsored money, with all these ties to these corporations and these big, large money and PACs and very wealthy people. And they basically tell you what to think. You'll follow their policy points in exchange for the money. That's the unspoken way it works. Everybody knows it works that way, but technically on paper, it's not supposed to work that way, but it does. So how are you going to raise enough money to be able to run for president? The millions and millions and millions you need to be able to run. And these days, it's a lot of money to run for president because they put out ads like crazy. How are you going to stay neutral and not accept the money from the corporations and the big PACs and to get basically swayed their direction?
That's a tough one, man. Like, that is honestly one of the tougher ones to answer. But the best way that you could do that, and when I say the best, it's relatively the best. There would not be as much funding, especially on working on a grassroots side of things. But the grassroots side of things, as far as campaign funding, is one of the ways that you can remain largely autonomous while trying to run for an office. It's very hard to do, though, because like Matthew's saying, y'all have to understand that while grassroots is amazing and you can raise a large amount of funding that way, at the same time, though, it's not as much money as super PACs can give and other kinds of lobbyist organizations that will fund campaigns. They will always run circles around the grassroots campaigns. So you're always going to be fighting an uphill battle against the advertising that can be done. However, though, there is a little bit to be said for having some good common sense rhetoric, which I feel like a lot of y'all apparently appreciate that I have some fairly decent common sense rhetoric, hopefully. And that can get you a good bit of the ways without having to spend that much money, because I do have to remind y'all of one person who really showed that you can't just pay your way into winning by running ads. And this isn't political at all. I just think it's a great example from recent history. A lot of people don't even know the guy ran anymore, but it was Mike Bloomberg. He ran, and he poured more money into just trying to get into that one party's like caucus, like than the presidential election actually did that year, I think. And he just didn't go anywhere because he didn't really have good rhetoric, and it didn't really make a lot of sense when it reached the ears of that specific party. Like, that's not like trying to get into the political side of things. That's just bringing up someone who literally didn't even need PACs. He just had raw money, and the raw money wasn't even winning over anyone with all the ads that the guy was running. And I know a lot of y'all saw those ads because I remember they were everywhere back when he was trying to run.
Well, honestly, I'm not trying to knock Bloomberg, by the way. He may be a nice guy, but, some people have charisma. Like, Enforcer, you have a lot of charisma. Like, you could run for president. Like, you have the ability to run for president.
Oh,
Some people do
shucks.
not have the charisma. I'm just being honest. Some people do not have the charisma to run for president because you have to appeal to a mass amount of people to be able to get enough votes to win. And these days, having a personality and one that's likable and one that is mass appealing, that is a necessity because most people don't vote on policy anymore. They vote on based on who they like the most. So if you're likable, that's a humongous advantage. Bloomberg was not likable. Like, he was not really electable. He didn't have much charisma. And, he may have had some decent policy points here and there and stuff like that if you want to get into that, which we're not. I'm not saying anything about his policy points. But he just lacked the charisma. And no matter how much money you have, that's not going to fix a lack of personality, to be honest.
Well, that's true. That's kind of like, as far as the presidential election goes, it would be a good bit of luck, especially if I wanted to remain autonomous from having to try and fulfill the requests or wishes of super PACs or large funders at the end of the campaign. There would have to be a good bit of luck that the competitor I'm going up against is so non-charismatic, they don't really stand a chance. Like, out of everyone that was picked in that party's caucus, still the most charismatic option doesn't even match. That would be a good bit of the luck. Like, to be honest with y'all, for me to get elected in a way where I'm not bound by any kind of super PACs or lobbyists and having to say one thing and then do what they want at the end of it, it would be a hat trick, to be entirely honest, to be able to pull that off. But that is a hat trick I'm dedicated to, because I know that the chances are somewhat slim, but that's not going to stop me, because the chances of this country existing in the first place were very slim at the start. And nevertheless, this country has somehow ended up existing out of a complete miracle, really, of a myriad of different things that happened during the Revolutionary War, and has gone on to be the most successful and prosperous country in the world. If there's ever been an underdog story that should really be looked at a great deal and studied, it is the story of the founding of this nation. And if this nation had a chance to exist in the first place, that means that my chance at pulling a hat trick out might actually work. It won't, most likely. The chances are greatly against me, but nevertheless, I would still give it the chance and the shot just to try and see if I could actually do it. Because if I got in the office, I know that many people would probably be pretty happy. There would always be detractors, but a lot of people would probably be pretty happy with what came out of it. But nevertheless, one could only hope. But I'm always a realist. Like, I'm not going to sit here and say I'm going to run for president, and I, like, right now, I would 100% win it. No, having to run it the way I would, especially on the funding side of things, would make this a hat trick, 100%. And that would mean that things would be a lot more difficult on my end than it would be for the competitor in that election. And that means that I would really have to be on my toes and doing everything perfectly and having an amazing deal of luck to be able to get to that point of winning the presidency, to be entirely
And also, not
honest.
only are you going to have a hard time raising funds, because I also, Hokey Redneck even mentioned this. I was actually incorrect. It's not the millions, it's billions now to be to run for president. It's in the billions, which is insane. So you're definitely going for corporate money. Like, you have to get that in the PACs, and they tell you what you're going to say. So you don't get to really pick that. So also, even if you're able to somehow get the corporate money and, sort of like snake your way through and sort of like say the things you kind of want to say, but also still appease the corporate donors and stuff like that, you still have to get past the fact that you're going to be such an easy target for everybody, because all the other people in the two-party system are playing by the rules, and you're not playing by the rules because you're trying to go down the middle. That is not the way things work in the two-party system. You're going to be the target of literally everybody from both sides being attacked, which is going to be a very bad position to be in.
I would be grilled. And another way that it could be done, and this is something I really wouldn't want to do, at least for now, and I'll tell you all about it, is that I could accept the lobbyists' money from the super PACs, and I could say things that would appease them a good bit until I got into office and then do whatever the hell I want. But I would get freaking grilled, like, everywhere. You would see media pieces coming out because these companies own a lot of the major news companies, and I'd be getting grilled for 4 straight years doing what would be the best for the nation, but I would not survive to see another second term. That would not happen because most of the public opinion is largely based off of what a lot of people read, and so regardless whether my policies would benefit the republic or not, most people would believe that it was not beneficial to him, and I would get voted out. That's kind of also how it works as well. So regardless of how it would work, the reality is that this is a crapshoot, or a hat trick, as I've been calling it, but I'm still willing to give it a shot. Because if it somehow did work, hopefully it would end up being a very successful presidency. Not for me, I'm not here to build a legacy or an image. I just want to see that the nation is provided for and taken care of the best it can, at least as best as the president could do it, or the government could do it at all. But anyways, with that,
honestly, Enforcer, the best way, real quick, the best way, if you wanted to be as neutral as possible, run for president and not have to really vie for too much of the corporate money. You'll still probably have to get some of it, but not as much as you needed before, and they won't have as much influence over you. You have to go into the private sector, become a business owner or something like that, be able to make a pretty good bit of money, build up a massive nest egg of millions and millions and millions, and then you might be able to maybe kickstart your campaign, so that way you can fund it yourself, and that way you're not beholden to donors. That is one way to do it. And also, that would also give you some credibility as well, because you've run a business, you have some experience, so you're not just you're straight out of college or something like that with no experience. You have some life experience then. That is the way to really do it. But then that takes up a lot of years. You'll be decades down the road. You'll probably be 50, 60 years old by the time you're able to really have enough money to actually run. And then by then you might be tired because you're getting around 50 or 60 years old, and you've run businesses. You've maybe had a family by then. Then you're getting tired. And you're like, do I really want to be the president? So I don't know. It's just complicated all the way around. But really having your own funding, that is the only way you can actually be independent. And that is very hard to accomplish.
Or there is another option. I could build up this channel to be one of the largest on YouTube. And a lot of y'all will everyone will always know that at some point I'm going to be trying to run for president in 2040. And a lot of y'all can hear exactly what y'all hear. A lot of the people who are saying y'all would vote for me, many more people would be hearing that over that course of time. And so then everyone knows, oh, that's the Enforcer. He usually talks from a very common sense perspective in support of our interests globally. He has some pretty solid ideas, and I would certainly vote for him. And then at that point, there's already a decent amount of momentum in the folks who would vote. And then I go out there and go, I'm going to run for president. And hopefully by that point, this channel is big enough that maybe there is some kind of a nest egg in the background or something, or something else could be done to help out with that. And then we can just move on forward into running for president, and hopefully, just the persona, well, not really the persona, but at least what I've been saying and doing for the past 16 years at that point will be credit in itself for the virtues of hopefully me being elected as the president and being a good one, at least a minimum, hopefully. But that's another idea. That one's also a crapshoot and hat trick as well, because usually channels do not survive for 16 years. I don't think a single one has on YouTube for the large part. So, you know, that's another crapshoot. But hey, we could see. Like, we could wait and see. Maybe a perfect storm happens and it's a miracle, and it does survive for that long. But who knows? Anyways, with that, I hope that does kind of go through all of that fairly well. But with that, we have to get on to loads more questions, because it is now the top of the hour, and I think we have loads more left. And so what do we got, Matthew?
All right, so this one is going to go to Old Warrior, who throws in a 50, and huge shout out to you, Old Warrior, for once again supporting the channel, and we appreciate it. Old Warrior says, just before the war, India bought 5 S-400 systems, but only 3 were delivered, and is it likely that after seeing how worthless they actually are, will they sell them to Iran?
It may have been that they actually saw that they were so worthless they canceled the orders. They'll probably keep them in service, even if they hate them, for a while, and then they'll end up just, you know, either retiring them and burying them. A lot of people end up burying systems like that, or just having them destroyed and dismantled. Or they may end up just giving it away to another country. They won't give it to Iran, though, because India isn't really like a big supporter of Iran, because there's actually a lot going on with that whole thing. You know what? Let me tell y'all. It's this group called the Tamil Tigers, and they're the biggest proxy force in the world, actually, if y'all don't know that. And they're mostly made of radical Islamic people. And, you know, I'm trying to make sure to avoid a certain word because YouTube doesn't like that word. But nevertheless, it has a little bit of ties with Iran. And so that actually means that India, while not having direct relations with Iran, where they would hate them, and also that group having direct relations with Iran, where India would hate them, they're still not that big of a fan of them. Because if they give the Iranians any kind of weapon systems, who knows? Maybe one day, if India starts to move really hard into the American sphere, Iran could start to turn a lot of their direction and efforts towards the Tamil Tigers of southern India. And then that could end up being a really big issue for the Indians. And so I hope that does address that well. And also, let me make sure that I get that correct, because from what I remember, the Tamil Tigers are a radical Islamic group, if I'm correct. And so let me see here. Let's see here. It is, let's see here. Dang, there's a lot written about them. Let's see here. I don't even think this is the right group, because this one says it was dismantled a little while ago. And I don't think that is the case, because I remember hearing about them not too long ago, and also looking at the development chart of India, and anywhere where they were present, even in the present day, it was completely undeveloped for the large part. But anyways, beyond that, I do believe, let's see, I do believe that they were a radical Islamist group, at least from what I'm remembering, because I believe the Pakistanis started to support the Tamil Tigers because they were ideologically similar. But correct me if I'm wrong on that, because a lot of people were saying they think they were Hindu, and maybe so. But I always remembered that I heard that the Pakistanis ended up inadvertently supporting them with weapons that the United States was providing them to give to the Mujahideen, because the Pakistanis supported the operation of the Tamil Tigers, which would seem to suggest that they're ideologically similar. But it seems as though a lot of people are actually fact-checking that and saying that they are actually Hindu. So thank you for correcting that. But nevertheless, the Iranians may end up supporting them, you know, if they wanted to. Ideologically, they're not similar enough, though, for the Iranians to probably support them, so that kind of throws that entire analysis on its head. I don't know, maybe the Iranians would give them the SM-400s. Thinking about it now, they might. But with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, and I thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here goes to, guess who? Dustin Mayo, yet again. He throws in another support, the third of the night, and throws in a 50. And huge shout out, Dustin, for the massive support. Last night and also tonight as well. We appreciate it. He said, Alaska should buy Russia, LOL. Man, he said that one again. They should. How about that?
Man, they should buy everything from this area right here, right there. You see that area, Matthew? The eastern point of the world, right there. They should buy from there all the way over to here. Right here, Matthew. You see this little area, the most easterly point, well, the westerly point of Russia? Right here. They should buy that whole thing in between.
I say they should buy the whole thing in between, and I think the price should be free.
Man, I think it should be. I think it should be so, and it was so. You know what we need to do,
Man,
Matthew?
we got a 100% off coupon. We have nukes.
That's just, man. You know what we need to do? We need to have the Pope come back out and create like the second Treaty of Tordesillas. You know, like the Treaty of Anchorage or something, where it's like this part of the world just goes to Alaska, and there's no counter. It's just that it goes to Alaska, and that's it. It's like we should have that happen again. But with that, I hope
They keep Siberia though. Like they can keep that.
Yeah, and they can also keep that little mosquito-infested land down here. That's like you know, swampy low ground. They can keep that as well. But the rest of it, we want, specifically Western Russia, beyond the Ural Mountains. We want all of that. We want the whole lot, Governor. But beyond that, thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running Dustin Mayo. And I completely agree with you. Alaska should get Russia for free, really. And so with that, thank you so much once again. And we are on to the next one.
And the next one here goes to Butchie the Crouton, who puts in a $50 donation. And thank you very much, Butchie, for the very generous support. For the very generous support while I stutter all the way through there. I have no idea why I can't speak. It's probably the lag that messed me up. But thank you very much, Butchie, for the support. And also, thank you for warding off those creatures on X earlier today. Y'all know who I'm talking about. And they said, love you guys and all you're doing. And I'm not going to be around for a few days, so please take a succulent live chat. And gelijk verlijken. Igor Jaka Jaka LSA.
And thank you so much for the support, Butchie the Crouton. And Matthew, were those virulous creatures those of the hot dog?
Yes, it was the bad hot dog creatures. Yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Oh heavens! I think I saw that, perhaps. But then I saw that the hot dog man actually has a criminal record, which I thought was absolutely hilarious. Oh, it's like,
He has a rap sheet.
He has a whole rap sheet. He's been what was it? Convicted of misdemeanors?
I can't remember for certain. I'd have to go back and look, but it was something.
Oh, it was juicy, and it was a lot of them. And of course, folks, I always have to remind y'all of this. Never take political advice from someone who cannot properly register their automobile. That seems as though that's might be an irresponsible enough person. You ought to not be getting political advice from him. That's my honest take. I don't know. You know, work with it what you will.
And they don't pay their tickets.
Yeah, when they can't pay their tickets, when they're caught drinking underage, which I personally didn't do. A lot of people do that, and they can't also keep their vehicle registered or insured. That seems to me to be a fairly irresponsible and illogical person, and I generally would not take any credence to anything that they say for the large part, because it sounds like they're lacking a good bit of common sense and good judgment. And also another interesting thing is I think that one of those happened while Hot Dog Man was in the army, shifting gears. So I was like, that's interesting. I was like, I wonder what happened with that. Because you know that probably didn't go well with command. I'd be sure of it. I'd be heavens for sure of it, for sure. But also, so it's probably a bunch of public indecency tickets. No, actually, like we actually saw them. Like he pissed off someone else so much they actually went and found his criminal record, and he has been he's gotten a good bit of misdemeanors. Some of them were petty misdemeanors. Some of them were legitimate misdemeanors. And one of the more legitimate ones, well, one of the more serious ones, was failure to register a motor vehicle or something like that. And it's like, how the hell can you not do that? It's like, especially with the car that he probably had at the time, it's like auto insurance can't be that expensive, you know? And also on top of that, it's like, it's illegal to not have auto insurance. It's like, how the hell could you? And also, Matthew, that suggests for anyone to have figured out he didn't have auto insurance that he was speeding or something, or either he got in a crash and then they asked for his insurance when the police showed up and he just didn't have any.
Possibly so. That could be the way it happened, maybe.
Yeah, that's true. Also, You're Taking My Life said he wasn't shifting gears. He can't drive a stick. Oh yeah, I forgot about that, man. I think he corrected us on that. He was like, those idiots, they're gonna catch a fat L because I can't even drive stick. It's like, bro, rip.
He's got soft hands. He can't drive a stick. He's got a good automatic.
You got soft hands, boy. You ain't worked a damn day in your life, boy. I've been working in the mill.
He probably puts lotion on his hands. He puts, on those soft hands, that lotion.
Oh man, I put lotion on my hands so that way I can help out Ukrainian refugees that are only women, but refugees, like women though, because I don't deal with men. Like it's like oh, dude, if he ran the U.S. government, it would be great, dude. He would be like,
okay, we're going to bring in all the refugees. Aw, man. And then as soon as the first man tries to cross over, up, only women. It's like, oh, okay. It's like, all right, bro, you got the simp over here. That's crazy, man. Like, when you really think about that, though, like, I gotta say this, folks. I'm not trying to say that he's doing anything here. I'm just saying, how come the only refugees he helps out are women? And how come they're women his age? How does that work? Make it make sense, people, because if you're doing something for the generosity of your heart, wouldn't there be some Ukrainian refugees that are men that you would be helping out, or maybe some women that have children with them that also fled Ukraine? Like, how come they're always single, childless women that he's helping out?
He's got soft hands and he's a simp. You heard me.
Yeah, it's like it's just it doesn't make a lot of sense, and it doesn't really seem like things are being done from the genuineness of the heart, really. It seems as though there's always an ulterior motive of benefit to be had behind most of this, and that is a very interesting kind of thing that I think people ought to explore a little bit more about this fella. Because if I remember correctly, Matthew, he was in Kyiv a little while ago going, oh man, the way the Ukrainian men treat these women, these beautiful, fine, the queenly women, they're on their phones, not even paying attention to them. Oh man, I would do them better. It's like, that guy who made that post is only helping out Ukrainian refugee women that are his age and single without children. It's like, that's a little interesting. That's a little suspicious, I'm not gonna lie.
I'm very bad now. So I'm a famous YouTuber. He probably was pulling out that line too. He's probably stuttering it just like that too when he said it. I'm famous.
Don't go look at the road trip stream. Oh my lord. Litty's it's Dr. Pepper. It's Dr. Pepper. It's like just absolutely on edge, just being as like abrasive as possible. Oh my lord, that was 5 hours of cringe. I didn't even watch all of it. I just watched a couple of clips, and that was one of them. And I was like, ugh. Oh, good lord. I was like, that's rough right there. But we'll have another hit piece made about us here soon, hopefully.
They're holding the water bottle with the water sloshing out of it, shaking, going, Dr. Peb. That's all, folks. Come on, Jack.
Oh, man. And then, oh, my goodness. The Twitter post, dude, where he takes the pictures of the women like he's like courting them, or he's like their boyfriend or something. I'm like, oh my god, it's cringe. It's like, stop. It's like, freaking stop, man. Oh my god. Oh, this is just terrible. It really is. And also
I might have to lose another 100 subs for that one.
Oh man, there goes another 100. Like,
and they're leaving in droves like the North Koreans.
Wait a minute, hang on. Did he really lose? Oh my lord,
yeah.
He lost another 100? Dude, how? How? Dude, he's down to like only gaining like 2.8 thousand subs over the year.
Wait, come back, Jack. Wait, come back. You can't go. You can't leave it. Baby, come back.
Oh,
Baby,
man.
come back.
Dude.
And you can blame it on Hot Dog Man.
Oh, wait a minute, dude. It's even better because if y'all didn't know, at the beginning of this year, the Hot Dog Man said, oh man, this is going to be my year. Watch out. I'm going to hit 100K. He's only gotten like 2.8 thousand subs this year. So he went from like 64,000, like 67.1. It's like, how sad, like how pitiful. And he's losing them now. Like he's literally losing all the progress. It's like, oh man, that's terrible. But he's like, that's fine. I can lose another 100. I just got to go simp on these single Ukrainian refugee women that are in a vulnerable position. Aw, man, you're in America with no one else around. Why don't I help you? Aw, man. It's like, that's a very questionable thing. Like, I'm just saying, y'all, that's a little sus. But anyways, moving on from that, I thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here goes to Patrick Chapdelaine, who puts in a 50, and thank you very much, Patrick, for that support. Also, Area 51 Aliens is in shock. They said, oh my god, oh my god. They said it twice. They're in shock, like the Hot Dog Man was when he lost the extra 100. But...
oh, hell no.
But anyways, Patrick put in that 50, and thank you very much, Patrick, for the very generous support. He said, keep up the good work, guys, and do you think it's possible that there will be a simultaneous massive attack from North Korea, China, Iran, and Russia?
And I thank you so much for the support, Patrick, and that is a great question. And as far as the answer goes, I don't think there will be a simultaneous attack, because World War II didn't even happen with simultaneous attacks. They were attacks that happened all at different times, but as time went on,
they all started to meld into one unified war against one group and the other. And so I would say they're not going to be unified. They're not all going to happen instantaneously, but they all will eventually happen, and they'll all get tied together into one major conflict. And that will be the conflict. Like, that is going to be the war of wars. Not the war to end all wars, but it will certainly be the war of wars without a doubt. And so with that, I hope that does address that well, at least in my opinion. And I thank you so much once again for helping this channel to keep on running. And also, I hope that does address that well. I was making sure to reread that. And also, thank you for being a Canadian viewer. And also, thank you for wanting us to keep up the good work, because we always try our best, even with some success. And so with that, thank you so much once again. And we are on to this. Also, Matthew, before one more thing, I always get a laugh out of this, man. You know what's about to happen, don't you? Like, you're going to open up the phone app, like, tomorrow, and you're going to look at the stream, because I always do this every once in a while, and I always get a huge laugh out of this. The Hot Dog Man people clip the parts where we trash talk him. Like, it's, like, supposed to be, like, hidden in secret or something, and they're bringing it to the light. And so, I'll come on here tomorrow, and I'll see some stupid title like, the Enforcer makes fun of Hot Dog Man for being a heroic savior of refugees, or something like that. And I'll be like, dude, like, how blind can you be? I'm like, dude, don't you see what he's doing? Like, dude.
Why? I never understood. Why did they clip it? It's not like it's secret. This is being broadcast to, let's see here. What's the viewership? 170,000 people so far. So it's not like it's secret. Everybody's getting to hear it. So, I don't understand. Why clip it?
Man, you know something, man? I've been thinking about this, y'all. I've been holding this one up my sleeve. But, you know Nardwar, Matthew?
You mean that guy that interviews rappers?
You're Khaled. We have to know. Like that guy?
Yeah.
So I've actually been talking to Nardwar behind the scenes, Matthew, and I'm actually setting up a little interview to have with Hot Dog Man here, you folks, and he's going to show up and he's going to go, "You were in the army. You drove trucks, didn't you?" And he's going to be like, "How did you know?" And he's going to be like, "You're Hot Dog Man. We have to know. Doot doodle doot," or something like that. He's going to be like, "How about those misdemeanors, Hot Dog Man? How about the unregistered automobile, the gray Tacoma?" And he's going to be like, "Oh my God, you're scaring me." And he's going to be like, "You're Hot Dog
and
Man.
I have a gift for you. Look, it's a hot dog model."
No, dude, it's going to be...
Oh my God, where'd you find
No,
this?
dude,
This was back from my days at the fair.
No, dude, it's going to be even better. He's going to be like, "And I have a present for you. Look at this." And Hot Dog Man's going to be like, "What the hell is that?" "It's the traffic citation you didn't pay." It's just, "Look, it's here. You can pay it now." It's just, oh my Lord. But I'll be honest with y'all, I have not been talking to Nardwar, but that would be funny if we had, and that would be funny if that did happen. If y'all could get that put together, let me know. I'd love to see it, and I would get a huge laugh out of it. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. Best I can, like, just considering that crossed my mind there, and I thought I'd throw up a good one. But with that, we are on to the next one.
Someone said, I have a gift for you, Hot Dog Man. Look, it's the court papers from the LSA. You've been served. That would be a good gift to give him. But anyways, moving on here to our next one. We have a $33 donation from Hal Rose, who's a channel legend, by the way. And thank you very much, Hal, for that support, as always. And they said, Enforcer Matt, it looks like the Russian habit of hiding in the forest has aroused the wrath of Baba Yaga. And pick a question, please. And it has really aroused aroused is an interesting term. I guess that could probably fit, though, because the Russians are aroused by Baba Yaga, interestingly enough. But it's carrying a very large tank mine, and it probably it probably did some terrible things. But Enforcer, what say you?
And I have to agree, Hal Rose. There are some Russians in the woods right now, man. They're like, "We're safe in the deep forests," and then they hear, and they're like, "Baba Yaga." They look up like freaking Willem Dafoe in that movie where he looks up into the sky. I forgot what the name of the movie is, but they look up at the thing like that, and it's a TM-62 anti-tank mine just falling right down on top of them. But with that, I got to thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we would not be able to make this thing possible, and we wouldn't be able to keep this thing running. And so with that, thank you so much once again, Hal Rose. I hope that has addressed that well, and we are on to the next one.
And Hal Rose's live chat goes to Jack, who says, has North Korea ever successfully launched a missile beyond Japan?
I think they have actually. Some of them have gone into the North Pacific. I've remembered a few in my short life that have flown over Hokkaido, which is the northernmost island of Japan, have ended up splashing down somewhere in the Northern Pacific. So yes, there are some that have made it. I just can't remember the specific times and the kind of missiles that they were off the top of my head. But nevertheless, I hope that does address that quite well indeed. And thank you once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running and sponsoring that live chat as well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one here goes to Cliff H, who puts in a $25 donation, and thank you, Cliff, as well for the support. He said, Marmot wants to know, how does a proxy group, Hezbollah, have so much official power in the Lebanese government? Is Lebanon a fake country owned by Iran and LC?
Oh, that's a great question right there. Oh, hello there. Hey, it's the
Marmot.
Oh, hello there, Governor.
Nice to see you guys, sir. We got some new news in the hot dog, man. It's like Newport news, but we call it hot dog news.
Aw, man, I could absolutely rip a pack of Newports. Aw, man, speaking of Newport. Shut up, Governor. Anyways, to tell you the answer to your question here about the... and what was the question again, Governor? Read it again, Governor.
And the question was, how does a proxy group like Hezbollah come to have so much official power in the Lebanese government? And is Lebanon a fake country owned by Iran?
Oh, right. I understand, Governor. Thank you, Governor. To answer your question, Governor.
Cheerios.
Oh, yes, cheerio indeed. Would you like a plum, Governor? Would you like a succulent plum?
I'll take 3.
Brilliant, Governor.
I mean, your whole stock. I'll take the whole basket or the whole branch, whatever the hell that is. I'll take the stick.
You take the twig.
Plums. Let me rephrase that. I'll take the stick of plums. That is.
All right, I was thinking it's kind of soft, but
I was thinking I was a little bit worded wrong. We have to remember phrasing, Governor. Remember, we're from Birmingham. We got to remember phrasing, and that phrasing was a little bit off. It was a little bit minging.
We's Brummies, Governor, from Smethick. but beyond that, so we all know that reference. I'm Danny G, yeah, from Smethick, Birmingham. Beyond that, moving on from that, to answer the question legitimately while keeping the Marmot on screen for a little bit. Yes, the Hezbollah pretty much has a reign over Lebanon. It's almost a fake country, and this is something that is very interesting to me, because for a while, we actually did know some Lebanese people. And it's a very interesting thing listening to them talk about their country, because they say things that just are not true when you look at it on its face. Like, they say, oh, Lebanon's a great country, and like they pretty much equate Hezbollah to just like this little group of like a gang, almost like you would see in like a big city in America, but they're only down in southern Lebanon. The rest of Lebanon's pretty chill. And it's like, but is it though? Because it's like pretty much all of Hezbollah runs their forces from Beirut. That's the capital of the country. And then not only that, according to everyone else, the IRGC floods weapons into the country from Baalbek and Sahli. And it's like, that just doesn't make any sense, and it doesn't line up with what they're saying. And from what I would understand, while a lot of people like to believe from Lebanon that it's not a shell country, it is a shell country. Hezbollah is really the one that runs things. We can clearly see that with how the Lebanese government and the Lebanese military pretty much take second fiddle to Hezbollah in every single situation inside of Lebanon internally on a domestic level. And so for that reason, it really is a shell country. But that is something interesting that I have to say about like these people, is that, like, to give a little bit more background, they are Lebanese citizens. Well, they're not Lebanese citizens, their parents are Lebanese citizens, but they are Lebanese who had to flee Lebanon because of the Lebanese Civil War. And many of y'all will know, if you know anything about the Lebanese Civil War, it was largely a battle in between Islam and Christianity inside of Lebanon. And the Islamic side, the Islamic faction, did end up winning, which largely was Hezbollah, or really the Liberation Front, as it was called at the time, in the country. And so these people had to flee because they were going to get killed, largely for the large part, or be subjected to oppression, pretty much, by the side that won. And so then they fled. And they left, and I believe they went either to Canada or Germany, and then they ended up coming here to America. And they are here specifically because Lebanon is run by Hezbollah for the large part, and it's a shell country that is really run by the Iranians in Lebanon. Well, not the Iranians in Lebanon, but the Iranians and Hezbollah as a whole. And then when Israel starts conducting offensive action against Lebanon, dealing with Hezbollah, and then they want to act like the Israelis are just attacking Lebanon out of the blue for no reason and they didn't do nothing wrong. And that makes no sense because it's like, if they didn't do nothing wrong, why are you here? You're the only reason that you're in America is because you ended up having to flee from Lebanon as a refugee, because the people who the Israelis are bombing right now were about to oppress y'all horrendously or kill y'all. And that's why y'all had to leave. So it doesn't really make a lot of sense to then act like, oh, the Israelis are these terrible people. Because it's like, the people that y'all are here in America over are the people they're bombing. It doesn't make a lot of sense. Make it make sense, people. Like, really, like, it doesn't make any sense to me at all, that whole, like, aspect of things. But that is just, like, the tip of the iceberg with that. It was weird. It was very weird, to put it lightly. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and I thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it was not for folks like you, we would not be able to make this thing possible, and I hope that also answers that question fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and moving on here to our next one. This one goes to GunFox61, also known as the Medic Fox. He puts in a $25 donation, and thank you very much, GunFox, for supporting. They said 1938, Orson Welles, War of the Worlds, radio plays, broadcast. Also, 1995, Quebec separatists narrowly defeated. 1991, the No-Name Storm, the Perfect Storm, peaks. 1974, the former heavyweight boxing champ Muhammad Ali challenges reigning champ George Foreman in Kinshasa, Zaire. And 1735, John Adams was born. 1918, Ottoman Empire signs treaty with the Allies. And also, take a question from the chat.
And I thank you so much for the support, my wonderful and incredible GunFox61. And I thank you for throwing in an amazing day in history. And I have to say that is one hell of a day in history right there. And also, it's very interesting here that the Ottoman Empire signed the treaty with the Allies, pretty much ending the war on their end with the Allies on this day. Actually, just a little bit before November 11th, which is Veterans Day in America, Armistice Day in Britain, and is the end of World War I as a whole. That's what the holiday was originally for. But nevertheless, I thank you so much once again for support, and we will make sure to take a live chat question. So what do we got, Matthew?
And the live chat question goes to, guess who? It's Bill Duff, who said, did anyone claim the drone strike on Chechnya?
No, no one has, actually. That's a good question. We haven't heard anyone claim it yet. The Ukrainians are still not claiming it, which is leading us to believe it was not them. It was someone else in the local area. And so with that, I hope that does address that quite well indeed. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Andy L, who puts in a $20 donation. And of course, thank you, Andy L, for being a channel legend. I don't see any comment to address here, but we appreciate that $20 support. And Enforcer, what say you?
And I thank you so much for the support as well. You're an absolute legend, I tell you. An absolute legend, old boy. And I thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because great heavens, we wouldn't be able to run it without amazing folks like you helping us to support it and make it possible. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that this addressed it incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to David Kotke, who puts in a 20. And thank you very much, David, as well. He said, you guys are awesome, and please take one from the chat.
And thank you for saying we're awesome. You're awesome. And I thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And we will make sure to get an incredible, succulent live chat in your honor. And so with that, Matthew, what do we got?
So this one goes to Anonymous, who says, how easy is it to get the ingredients for solid rocket fuel? And also, they said, do you get tired of my questions, Matt? No, they're actually really good. I don't think I'm tired of your questions at all. I ask for these live chat questions because I want long-lasting questions, and I like this one. But Enforcer, what is the answer?
It's actually a little difficult when you get into the minutiae of it. You can make solid rocket fuel that's sugar-based, but it's very poor quality and generally does not have a good burn rate, and it can sometimes be generally inconsistent as well. If you want to refine solid rocket fuel, it actually does take a bit of a refined process. And this is the reason why it is generally something that is relegated to companies that specialize in the production of solid rocket fuels. The Iranians do have two companies, and both of those were in Iran. Well, actually, in Tehran. It sounds a bit like Iran. Apparently, that mentally got messed up in my head. But nevertheless, that is why they are not able to produce it, because those were both destroyed. It's actually a very difficult process. But, of course, in its crude form, it is easy to do. But for larger weaponry, you do have to have a refined source of solid rocket fuel, and that is where the Iranians are going to start running into considerable issues. But nevertheless, I do thank you so much for the support and sponsoring that live chat, and we never get tired of your questions. They're actually incredibly good, and sometimes delve into things that we're not able to discuss all too much, or the channel is all too familiar
familiar with, at least in the question segment. It's a great thanks to you once again. I hope that has addressed it incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one here goes to another channel legend. It's Leora Abigail, who puts in a $20 donation. And huge shout out to Leora as well for that support. And Leora says, hey, Enforcers, and great coverage as always. And thank you. And they said, it looks like the U.S. is taking the gloves off finally. And Kim is just pissed about Russia giving more snow coffee to Kim's troops. Aw, man. Putin's more of a god to his troops than I am. Aw, man.
I thought they were here for me.
They were not.
There goes another 100. But beyond that, I gotta thank you so much for the support. And maybe that is the case. Maybe that is so that they are liking Putin more than Kim at this point. Maybe because they're getting food. I mean, that's something that Kim Jong-un wouldn't give them. He was stealing it from him. But beyond that, I do thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because it is folks like you who help to make this thing possible and keep it rolling. And so a massive thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Keandre Graham, who puts in a 20. And thank you very much, Keandre, for the support as well. They said, whatever happened to France sending troops? And what would it take for Russia to completely withdraw?
France sending troops never happened and was never going to happen, at least from what we were seeing. It was more so threats, and very visibly enforceable threats that the French were making against the Russians, that if they were to do certain things, they were going to get militarily involved. It was never that they were going to be there. It was more so that they were going to send troops there. But that is a bit of a caveat. I'm really speaking about actual combat troops that would be fighting on the front. There are French advisors in Ukraine, from what we understand, in the couple of hundreds at this point, but they never sent actual fighting troops. So they did send French troops, technically, into Ukraine, but they're in advisory roles, but they never sent combat troops. So I hope that does kind of clarify the two different, bits of info that we could give on the French, or at least their troops in the area. And I thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running as well. And so with that, thank you once again. And we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here goes to Patrick Chapdelaine once again, who puts in another one. It's a 20 this time, and thank you very much, Patrick. He said it from Quebec, and keep up the good work, guys. And thank you.
Hey, and thank you so much for being from Quebec. A very interesting place. I was actually watching a bunch of interesting stuff on a place near to Quebec, Nova Scotia, which is actually some of the most dangerous and treacherous waters in the world. Did you know that, Matthew? Did you know that?
I did, actually. I did.
Yes, it's crazy. It's crazy stuff, really. I've been watching it on a channel, not sponsored or anything, but it's called Part-Time Explorer, and he's actually a really good channel. He makes very good documentaries, and I was watching some stuff on the wreck of the Indian, the Hungarian, and I think there was another ship. Yeah, it was a circus ship or something that he covered that caught on fire somewhere around here, and they ended up, it was in Yarmouth right over here, and they ended up getting all of the animals from the menagerie and stuff, and all of the circus performers off except for one zebra, which drowned in the wreck. But still, it was very interesting, and I was like, dang, this guy makes good stuff. But nevertheless, it's very interesting stuff, Nova Scotia, and also Quebec is very interesting due to its French history from colonial times. So with that, thank you so much for the support. I hope that has addressed it quite well. And with that, we are on to the next one. And also, before we are on to the next one, we do have big news coming from the good old Enforcer Matt. And so, Matthew, take it away, old boy.
All right, folks, so it is that time of the night, because I have to wake up super early pretty much every morning since I've been doing this. I've been jumping off at 12:30 or a little bit earlier. That's because I have to wake up early to tend to some business every single morning for the past month, and I have to continue doing that for the next foreseeable weeks. So I'm going to be hopping off and leaving Enforcer to finish off the remaining super chats in the spreadsheet. It's actually not too many, but there are some left. But I want to say real quick, huge shout out to everybody once again for supporting the channel, and I appreciate it very much, and obviously the Enforcer does as well. And I'm going to see you all tomorrow. Tomorrow's not my day for a short war video. That is the Enforcer's day. So he will be on the short war video tomorrow if there is enough news to cover. But I'll be heading on out to get some rest to wake up early tomorrow. So thank you all once again tonight, and I'll see you all tomorrow on stream. And yes.
Could you send me the spreadsheet, Matthew, and another email to the think tank email, please? Because for some reason it's not showing up anywhere.
Let me send that. Let's see here.
I was looking in all the emails and I was like, where the hell did they go? Because you sent me like just a few days ago, and it's not showing up in the place I put it in the email just a few days ago. I was like, what the hell?
It should be sent over to you, you heard me?
You heard me? There we go. Now that one shows up.
Hey!
Hey! But beyond that, a big good night to Enforcer Matt, doing amazing work on air and off air. And the best of luck to you, Matthew, old boy. Best of luck to you.
Thank you very much. Get some rest in, and I'll see you all tomorrow, folks. And good night to you. Long lasting. Just see you then. But see you then. Good night.
And good night to Enforcer Matt. And with that, we will be continuing on the show without Enforcer Matt. But beyond that, it's all fine. We'll make sure to get through it a-okay. But nevertheless, moving on to the next one, we do have a $20 super chat. And let me make sure that that one's colored in correctly. A little mysterious there. It's not coloring in. That's weird. Mysterious. Very much. But anyways, moving on from that, we do have a $20 super chat from Glock Who's There LSA. And Glock Who's There said, is the Enforcer doing any more weapons reviews? Sadly, no. Because YouTube kind of came down on the gun review people, and we were planning on doing that in the near future, trying to do like a second offshoot gun review thing. But because YouTube's rules have changed, which they can do, it's going to be pretty much impossible to do that. So we're not really going to be putting out a lot of gun reviews from here forward. And also, you know, it's just going to be something that's kind of shelved indefinitely. But we do have the documentary project still going on in the background. The China-Taiwan video is supposed to be coming out eventually, but we don't know how we're going to film it in person now. So I might just release the documentary without the in-person elements because they really don't add that much to it. It's like maybe an extra paragraph or two and the entire documentary that's added, so it's not that much. So we might release that here very soon, but beyond that, yeah, the gun channel thing or the gun review thing can't really happen anymore just because of YouTube and how it is these days. But still, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address it incredibly well. With that, we are on to the next one, which is a $20 super chat from Mayor of Spin City. And Mayor of Spin City is spinning, and Mayor of Spin City said, Fiend, yeah! And I don't know what that means, but hey! And I thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, and I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are moving on to the next one, which is a $20 super chat from Andy L., an absolute legend of the stream, and hey! And thank you so much for the support. Did not throw in a comment, but the support means a lot and helps us to keep this thing running, and I thank you so much for the support and making this thing possible, because if it was not for folks like you, we would not be here right now. And so a big thanks to you once again. And with that, we are on to the next one, which is a $20 super chat from Avari Mandibratis. And Avari Mandibratis said, could the U.S. get away with a secret B-2 strike using 30,000-pound bunker busters against Iran? Moabs, pretty much. What targets would you strike as POTUS map? And if I was to strike targets in this hypothetical strike, as the commander-in-chief of the armed forces, or as FDR said, the commander-in-chief of the Army and Navy, because the Air Force and really everything else didn't really exist. It was really the Army, the Navy, and then the Army Air Corps was an extenuation of the Army, and the Marine Corps is the Department of the Navy. So he was technically correct in that statement. But nevertheless, if I was to say we were to slam bunker busters into Iran, I would only drop them really on Isfahan at the start. Like, we're talking about a strike that would just completely debilitate Iran well into the future. Striking their nuclear research facilities is it. So dropping a Moab on that would be what I would be for. Not really many of them. We don't need a lot. But if we're talking about trying to destroy all of their abilities, I would try and drop a Moab on Bandar Abbas, or at least the naval wharf at Bandar Abbas, which is right here. Hopefully, at least capsize a large amount of their vessels in port. Although, honestly, that's not really going to do much. They're just going to refloat them in time. You really have to sink these things out at sea to really do any significant damage to their navy. But we could still hit them and see what would happen with that. And then, let's see, what else would I hit? Well, you wouldn't want to drop one on Tehran, because then you could run into a mass casualty event, and we're not really into that. So, that would really be it. Bandar Abbas and Isfahan, the nuclear research facility and the naval wharf down there. That would be really my two main targets to hit. And so with that, I hope that does address that well, and I thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one. And we have a $12 super chat from George Lambert. And George said, thank you for the news, and I enjoy being a member of CLSA. Watch you guys every night. You're doing an amazing job. The audience can't thank you enough. If you can afford it, let's all toss in $2. And oh, no. We never ask anyone for support, George Lambert, and we never want anyone to feel like they are obligated to support the channel. We are entirely appreciative of the folks who do, but if people choose not to, we're just happy to have them here. Like, out of everyone who's been here tonight, we have had, let me make sure that I'm getting this correct. Let's see, we've had about 40 super chats over the course of the whole night, and out of those 40 super chats, that came out of a pool of about 172,000 people at this point. We never want anyone to feel like they have to support the channel, because a lot of these people here, the 172,000 people here, we're just happy to have them. And if anyone supports the channel, we're just happy to have that too. We don't really want to like compel anyone or, you know, make anyone feel like they have to support the channel, but I do thank you for the kind words and enjoying the channel so much you want people to support it, but I always want that to be a person-to-person thing and never compelled by anything that we say or do in that large part. But I still thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running, and I hope that addressed that fairly well. And moving on from that, we have a $12 super chat from Zach Garber. And also Zach Garber said, George and Lambert, long live the Lee Spring Army. And hey, thank you so much for the support, Zach Garber, and helping this channel to keep on running. And it looks like you actually did start a little bit of a movement right there, George. You actually got a couple of people to throw something in. And also, I think, yeah, actually, Old Warrior did throw in 100 as well, in your name, George. And so I got to thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one, which is a 12 from John Bartley. And John Bartley said, it just feels good to be here. Thanks, Matt. And I agree with George. And dang, George, you did start a movement. And I got to thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running as well. And also, thank you so much for being happy to be here, John Bartley, because we're always happy to have every single person here, whether they be big or small, or whether they support the channel or not, or whether they hit the like button or not. And if you did hit the like button, a big thanks to you. But we're always just happy to have everyone here just because y'all are here. And so a big thanks to you once again. And with that, we are on to the next one, which is going to Magulator, who threw in a 10 with no comment, as well as Rob Keith, who also threw in a 10 with no comment. I got to thank both of y'all for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because y'all both make this thing possible and make this thing a reality. And so with that, thank you so much once again, and we are on to the next one, which is another $10 super chat from John Bartley. And John Bartley said, here is $10, George, let's go. And thank you so much for the support once again and helping this channel to keep on running. And it's very interesting to see, George, you actually did start a movement. George Lambert, you legend, you absolute legend, you. Because if I'd seen that earlier, I'd been like, no one support, but then everyone did, and I didn't even see that happen, really. But but still, thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running, to all of y'all who support the channel. And with that, we are on to the next one, which is a 10 from Off Grid with Scott. And Off Grid with Scott said, European/Baltic countries have previously said they may send troops over last year and before. Now that another country has entered, do you think Western Alliance countries will start jumping in? And I generally think that they will not, because we see that there is still a large U.S. aversion to direct Western involvement in the war. And so, for that reason, I'm generally thinking that they still will not get involved, even with the North Koreans being involved at this point. It's a very disappointing thing to think, but it honestly really is reality, to be entirely honest with how the U.S. is working in the background at this point in Eastern Europe. But still, thank you so much once again for support, Off Grid with Scott, and I hope that does address that quite well. And moving on from that, we have another $10 super chat from Two Hot Dog Guys, One Cup of Snow. and Two Hot Dog Guys said, long live the LSA and Slava Ukraini. Any thoughts towards Nostradamus and Baba Yaga's prediction for 2025 regards to Europe going to war? Thanks for the update, guys. I don't know about those predictions. I'm generally not a big guy into crystal balling, which that sounds a lot like crystal balling, so I wouldn't be able to say for sure. It really just relies on millions of different variables, and all of those variables come together each and every day to largely say World War isn't happening. But one day, all of the keys will click in the right spot at the right time, and a world war will begin. But I don't really know if that would be next year. I generally would greatly doubt it. But still, thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one, which is a $10 super chat from Aaron. And Aaron threw in a 10 and said, what do the intel leaks with Tomahawks have to do with Ukraine? Sorry, I'm out of the loop and haven't heard, but former TTWCS operator in the Navy. And also, thank you for being one of the formerly served in the Navy. But beyond that, to answer that question, Ukraine requested Tomahawks for long-range strikes into Russia, and the United States so graciously leaked that to the press. And it ended up making a massive, what would we call it? A coup in the press, really, if you want to call it that, and it was a big issue. And Zelensky was not happy with that at all. So that's kind of what the whole Tomahawk missile thing was about. It actually did pertain to Ukraine, and it was something that the Ukrainian government was not happy at all to hear was leaked to the press. And so with that, I hope that does address that well. And moving on from that, we have a 5 from Jack Ray. To get this one really quickly, because I don't have the ability to put stuff in the spreadsheet. Jack Ray put in a 5 and said, make Russia small again, LSA, merch plug, and YouTube censor didn't allow the actual name. Sad. And yes, it is quite sad, but if you do go to officialenforcerstore.com, you can get the Make Russia Small Again t-shirt. We're all selling these until the end of this week on Saturday, and I do have to say that we would love to know that many people did get this shirt, because it's an amazing shirt, and not only that, it supports this channel and Ukraine simultaneously. Every single sale of this shirt, 10% of the profits go to United 24, and the remainder go to supporting this channel. Look fleek around your folks. Tell them, drip or drown, and buddy, be swimming. Be dripping as much as the Moskva after it got hit by those Neptunes. Heavens be, we will make Russia small again together, as the Western world has always done, and always will do. So please, make sure to get one. Official Enforcer Store, link down in the description below. And I hope that many people do enjoy this badass shirt as it's been described by Stephen H. II. And so with that, I hope that does address that quite well. And thank you so much for giving support, Jack Ray, and allowing us another merciless plug, because we love merciless plugs, and I hope that that was quite one for the books. And so with that, thank you so much once again. We are on to the next one, which is a $10 super chat from Leora Abigail. And Leora Abigail said, "Hey Enforcer, I don't blame you for feeling like nothing changed no matter who is our commander-in-chief in the U.S. I'm glad you think logically, and you got my vote if you run for president." I thank you so much for the kind words, Leora Abigail. And I thank you for seeing where I'm coming from. It's generally an interesting position. A lot of people don't like to stand alone, because it's tough, really. You get attacked from all sides sometimes. But in my position, in my opinion, it's better to stand alone than to stand with everyone and be wrong, really, in my opinion, at least on this stance. Other stances, though, if the entire nation selected something and said, this is the way, that's it. It's democracy. It's spoken, and the people have what they wish for. Whether that's in my interest or not, that's, not how democracy works. Or at least how a republic works. It's generally the will of the people that get their way. And so with that, I thank you so much once again for support, Leora Abigail, and helping this channel to keep on running, and thank you for giving me your vote for president in 2040. And moving on from that, we have a 10 from Veteran RN, and Veteran RN said, just bought a t-shirt. And hey, thank you so much for support, Veteran RN, and thank you for getting a t-shirt. The Make Russia Small Again shirts are absolutely killer good, and I cannot wait to see them out there in the world at large. And also, thank you once again for the amazing support and helping us to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible. And so a massive thanks to you once again. Before we move on, 1 second, I just got to make sure that I get something done right there in the background. And with that, we are moving on to the next one, which is a 7 from Linda de Solonos. And she did not throw in a comment, but I do thank you massively for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it was not for folks like you, we would not be able to make this thing possible. And so with that, we are on to the next one, which is a 5 from George Lambert. And George Lambert said, I will match up to $2, up to $100 for every $2 plus donation for the next 15 minutes. And I gotta thank you so much for the support, George Lambert, and helping this channel to keep on running. And also, thank you for such a gratuitous offer. Of course, your support means a lot and helps us to keep this channel running. And if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to be here right now. And with that, we are on to the next one, which is a $5 from Jeff Monhay. Jeff Monhay didn't throw in a comment, but he did throw in support, and the support is greatly appreciated. And I thank you so much once again for enjoying this channel and supporting it, because if it was not for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible. And so thank you so much once again. And we are on to the next one, which is a $5 super chat from Sam Crenshaw. And Sam Crenshaw said, glad you got a fiber connection. Now we need to fix Matt's mic issues. Content quality, 10 out of 10. Long live the LSA, and long live the LSA indeed. And I'd have to say a massive thanks and appreciation to you, Mr. Crenshaw. And thank you for enjoying this channel massively and supporting it and helping it to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one, which is a 5 from Simon Condon. And Simon Condon said, for the Cup of Snow Fund. And long live the Least Spring Army, and long live the Least Spring Army, and thank you so much for the Cup of Snow Fund, because it helps us to keep this channel running. And so with that, thank you so much once again, and we are on to the next one, which is a $5 super chat from Andrew Honeycutt. And Andrew Honeycutt said, Mark Twain said that history doesn't repeat itself, but it often rhymes. Are we seeing the same stuff that occurred at the turn of the century in LSA? And we kind of are. I would say it seems very similar with how tensions are rising worldwide and multiple different interests are starting to clash. I would say it really does, to be entirely honest. So this is one of those elements that rhymes. Will it rhyme almost to a T? Who knows? But at this moment, it certainly is uncannily rhyming at this point, if we want to put it that way. And so I thank you so much for the support, Andrew Honeycutt, and supporting this channel and helping it to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one, which is a $5 super chat from Ed, Irish Ed here. And is it possible that we can agree that oh heavens, I cannot comment on that one, Ed, because that would be a bit political. It's a bit politically, well, you know, some people would say it's not politically motivated. Some people say it is. And that's, you know, kind of the thing that makes it hard to answer that question. Not that I have an aversion to answering it, not to make it like a political roundabout statement here, but not that I have an aversion to answering that question, because I think it's kind of obvious to everyone, but, you know, some people are still offended by that, you know, but, like, you know, like there's some things that have happened. It's like, well, quite obviously this is the case. You know what? I don't think it'd hurt to say, yes, it does seem so. Because if he was not, he would be running for a second term, and he's not. So, yes, it does seem so, because even his own party kind of unilaterally decided that he's not exactly fit to run for a second term and just ousted him. So, yeah, it seems so. It's at least that's what I would say, Irish Ed, to kind of just put that out there. A little bit of an uncomfortable thing, but I think everyone's kind of come to the realization of that at this point. But with that, I hope that does address that well. Thank you so much once again for support. And with that, we are on to the next one, which is a $3 super chat from Dottie, a 2 from William Mitchell, and a 2 from VC Slim. And I got to thank all three of y'all for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because y'all make this thing possible. And with that, we are on to the next one, which is a $2 super chat from LSA Sergeant Figman. And LSA Sergeant Figman said, LSA, hit the like button. That's an order. And that is an order. And I got to thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it was not for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to be here right now for folks to hit the like button. And man, have a lot of people hit it. We've gotten up to nearly 4.4 thousand likes, which is absolutely crazy. And I got to thank everyone for watching tonight and hitting the like button so far. And moving on from that and into our last super chat, we have a $2 super chat from George Lambert. And George Lambert said, thank you everyone for supporting LSA. You rock. And you rock, George Lambert. And I got to thank you so much for that massive support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it was not for folks like you, we wouldn't have been able to make this thing possible for the longest time. And so with that, it is now time for us to move on into the live chat segment. Of course, and I know many people are used to hearing this, and I hate to say this almost every night, but due to time constraints, we will not be able to answer a large amount of super chats. It is almost the top of the 4th hour of the stream. It is currently at 3 hours and 50 minutes. And while Matthew does have to get up early to tend to things, I also have to get up a little bit earlier to also tend to things as well, with running this channel and also a whole bunch of other stuff as well. And so I also want to sleep. And so for this reason, we will be addressing the Morse code decoders of the stream, 3 live chats, and rounding this thing out. And so moving on into the Morse code decoders of the stream, we had the entire roster. We had Cliff Simonson, Mark Hodges, Earl Renew, Kevin J, Paul Schultz, David Millsaps, Her Royal Fluffiness, and Arabelle Garbo. And the Morse for today reads, and Nightbot, it's in capitals because it's Morse code. North Korea trying to get a nice snapping up body bag. They will have their wish granted. And long live the Lee Spring Army. And that's the sound of money. And y'all got it dead on the nail. That was exactly the Morse code message. And now I've got to congratulate you for getting that correct. All of y'all for getting that correct, because y'all been doing that for 980 days now, and we are truly counting down the days to day 1000 of this war, and y'all are still getting that dead on the nail every single time. And so a massive congratulations to y'all for that. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the third to last question of the night, which goes to Leonce Pierre. And Leonce Pierre said, hello, enforcers. Did you happen to see the North Korean defectors living in South Korea volunteering to go to Ukraine as advisors, and about 200 of them. I actually have not heard about that, and if that is happening, I would not doubt it at all, because they probably do not like North Korea, especially after having escaped and seeing what life is like outside of the cage. So I would not doubt that, but I have actually not heard that news at all, Leonce Pierre, and that's news to me. So thank you for giving me some news. And so with that, we are on to the next one, which is the second to last question of the night, which goes to Shargi. And Shargi said, who wants to bet that China will send PLA forces to Russia soon for training exercises, and maybe the Kursk region? While the Russians and the Chinese have conducted a few joint training exercises in the past, sometimes usually in China, sometimes usually in Russia, but I would doubt that they would be sending any to Kursk, because that would be too close to an active war zone for comfort, and that would clearly look like they're getting involved in the war. And then at that point, the sanctions would start rolling in, and while they may be trying to quietly get involved, it wouldn't be quiet at all. It would be pretty pronounced, to be entirely honest. So getting involved in military exercise, that's not out of the question, but going to Kursk, though, that is out of the question from what I would know, but still, not that far from the truth, really, to be honest. And so with that, I hope that does address that well. And we are on to the final question of the night, which is a live chat from David Tablet. And so the lucky last person for the lucky last question of the night is David Tablet. And David Tablet said, could the North Korean actions on the Korean Peninsula be to keep South Korea and its allies at bay while they are otherwise engaged in Ukraine? And maybe so, actually. It might be. But the thing is that the South Koreans really wouldn't be getting involved in large numbers if it wasn't for the North Koreans getting involved. So it may actually have the opposite effect, but that may have been the initial plan of the North Koreans, or it may have just been a very self-centered sort of a mindset with North Korea that they had to have food resources, and so they were going to do anything, including supplying the Russians materially and personnel-wise, so that way they can get food resources in return. That may have also been the case as well. But I actually probably maybe a mix of the two, really. But with that, I hope that does address that incredibly well, at least the best I can, and it is the end of tonight's stream. I've got to thank every single person so much for watching tonight. It has been one hell of a night. There are still about 5,000 of y'all watching at this point, and it is absolutely crazy to think there's still about 5,000 people here, considering that at the peak, there was about 16.5 thousand people, and about 175,000 people have watched this stream before it ended. We are entirely honored and massively appreciative of each and every one of y'all and y'all's time watching this channel. I say this every single night, but I mean this every single night. Y'all are not just numbers to Matthew and me. Of course, YouTube only shows numbers. It shows that 175,000 people have watched this stream, and about, let's see, what was it, 16.5, yeah, 16.5 thousand people watched the stream at the peak. YouTube only shows us numbers, but we know all of the faces and the voices of the folks in the live chat, and all of the people who show up every once in a while in our live chat, who we are absolutely blown away or watching, that are always letting us know that they enjoy the channel and they greatly appreciate it for the kind of news coverage that it provides. If it wasn't for all of y'all and all of y'all's interesting inputs and different, I guess you could say, fabrics of life that y'all have all had, and all of the collective support for Western and American interests that y'all all have together here in the Lee Spring Army, this channel wouldn't be as fulfilling to run as it has been. And I've got to thank each and every single one of y'all so much once again for watching. It's been an absolute honor and a pleasure, and if y'all have enjoyed greatly, please make sure to subscribe, like, and comment, because I will be seeing y'all tomorrow in the Short War Summary, and I will also be seeing y'all later that night during the next stream at 10 p.m. Eastern Time. And so with that, good night, good luck, take care, stay safe, Slava Ukraini, and long live the Lee Spring Army. The Lee Spring Army will never die.
Yes.
The Lee Spring Army sends its regards